The first flight carrying asylum seekers to Rwanda will take off today, despite protests from critics.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock. It's the 14th of June, and this is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Thanks for your company. Here's what's leading the news this morning. The first flight to Rwanda will leave later today after a decision from the Court of Appeal. The number of passengers has been reduced to just 8. But charities are still hopeful that that flight could still be stopped altogether by a separate injunction in the High Court.
The EU has opposed the government's plans to scrap parts of the 2019 post-Brexit deal between the UK and Northern Ireland, arguing it breaches international law. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss says it's a reasonable, practical solution and will improve the flow between the two countries. And we'll be speaking to her just after 9.
Today marks 5 years since the Grenfell Tower fire, which claimed the lives of 72 people, including 18 children. The tragedy, which uncovered an enormous housing safety scandal, has left many people still fighting for justice.
And it's the 40th anniversary of the end of the Falklands War. We'll be live from the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire to remember the end of the conflict.
So, your memories of the Falkland War, perhaps you served there, perhaps you had family who took part in the whole situation. 40 years since it all ended. Let us have your stories, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at gbnews.
And remember, you can subscribe to the GB News channel on YouTube to get all the latest on the big stories everyone's talking about.
Rwanda we begin with. First flight carrying asylum seekers there has been cleared to take off later today. That was after yesterday's Court of Appeal ruling.
However, the number of passengers on board has been significantly reduced from 31 to 8, and charities are still hopeful that the flight could be stopped altogether by a separate injunction in the High Court.
Campaigners have argued that the policy will put migrants at risk, but officials are determined to go ahead. They say the strategy will deter people from making dangerous channel crossings. Now, we want your views on this throughout the programme this morning.
Well, the Home Office has also said the plan is in the public interest and should not be stopped.
For more on the legality and what this means for other asylum seekers is the immigration lawyer, Schuyler McKeith, and political commentator and former Conservative Party MP Michael Brown, who joins us here in the studio. Very good to see you, Michael.
Good morning.
Schuyler, let's begin with you. Look, you know, I just reflect what our viewers and listeners are thinking on this, and they say, well, it might be distasteful, but has anybody got a better idea? Could I ask you, do you have a better idea?
Well, currently human rights groups view the scheme to be unlawful, procedurally unfair, and constituting a serious impediment to access to justice. And it is important to note that removal to a safe country where a person's human rights would be violated would not be lawful. And if an individual would be exposed to torture or degrading treatment in a certain country, it would not be lawful to send that person to that country. And it has been pointed out that Rwanda's situation for the LGBTQ community is poor, and it is anticipated that human rights concerns may come to light as a result of that. And in addition, a further concern might center on whether adequate measures exist in Rwanda to protect a refugee or asylum seeker against the forcible return to a country where they may be subjected to persecution. And the UK government has not said what it would do if people sent to Rwanda end up having their human rights breached in Rwanda, or if those individuals are sent to a country where they could be persecuted.
Thank you for outlining all of that. Has the British government said in any way they will continue, from a Guardian point of view, that there's still a responsibility and onus on them to monitor what is going on?
There have been no clear guidelines currently on that matter, and lawyers are said to be directing their attention to getting those individuals removed from the flight, the 7 individuals that are left. And so those seeking to resist removal on today's flight will need to rely on the outcome of urgent individual challenges. And many individual challenges have already succeeded in securing a temporary pause on removal, and it remains to be seen as to whether there will be anyone left to send to Rwanda today.
Sorry, got
Michael Brown
Michael
here.
Brown, yes. Michaela Wrong, who's coming on later on in the show. Michael Brown, I want to ask your opinion about this letter that the Archbishop of Canterbury and of York has written, along with the 23 bishops of the Church of England. They've written in the Times newspaper today and described this as an immoral policy that shames Britain. And this comes just days after Prince Charles, who will be the future head of the Church of England, also called it appalling. Do you feel a little bit ashamed of it?
No. I think that we have to remember that the people of this country don't vote for the Archbishop of Canterbury. They don't vote for the Prince of Wales. They vote for an elected government on the basis of its election manifesto. And this government was elected with an overwhelming mandate just 2.5 years ago to deal with illegal immigration. Now, they've had no cooperation whatsoever from the EU or from President Macron. If we cannot go on being an open door policy where immigration is concerned, something of the order of 28,000 illegal immigrants have been trafficked by the most appalling criminals into this country with no assistance whatsoever in terms of the European Union or President Macron. And the government cannot allow itself to be in this situation indefinitely forever. I mean, I saw protests outside the Home Office yesterday with placards saying, open our doors. Well, our doors are open already. And the strain this is going to put on the tolerance of the British people, the social services, the education system and the health service if we have absolutely uncontrolled illegal immigration. So the government has got to respond to this, and it is not archbishops who run the country. It is not, with respect to the Prince of Wales, the royal family that runs this country. It is the elected government on the basis of their manifesto.
OK, and Skylar, could I just ask you, listening to what Michael's had to say, and honestly, I do have to say that by, I would say 90% of people who get in touch with us reflect what he is saying on this. Is your problem with Rwanda as a destination, or the whole concept, the whole policy of subcontracting almost these people?
Provided provided it is done in a humane way, there may not be an issue with it. A humane and legal way, there may not be an issue. And Priti Patel did say that the goal was to put an end to people smuggling, and that is an issue. And so under the new arrangement, anyone who crosses the channel by small boat could be relocated to Rwanda, and she claims that the new policy will deter illegal entry and be a major blow to evil people smugglers. And there is an explanatory note to this bill, and it states that the purpose of such a model is to manage the UK's asylum intake and deter irregular migration and clandestine entry to the UK. So as long as there are clear, humane and legal manners in which they approach this, then there may not be an issue.
Final thought then from you, Michael Brown. Do you actually think that this will work?
Well, that is an open question, but the government has tried everything else through the negotiation with the EU. Remember that the international law states that if you are a genuine migrant fleeing from persecution, you should seek legal entry into the country that you first arrive in, which is usually within the EU. And the EU are basically allowing migrants to mass on the coast of northern France to come to one country only. It is ironic, isn't it, that everybody trashes the United Kingdom, but migrants only want to come to the United Kingdom.
That's not statistically borne out, though, is it, Michael? I mean, actually, a lot of countries take far greater numbers of people arriving into the European Union than the UK. It's not...
They may take them, but at the end of the day, France is supposedly a safe country. France is simply allowing and encouraging illegal migrants to come to the United Kingdom. There has to be a situation one day when the government, if it doesn't respond to the public demand for controlling immigration, especially illegal immigration run by these criminal trafficking gangs, the public will, I'm afraid, respond in very unfortunate ways, and we cannot allow that to happen.
Skylar McKeith, we say goodbye to you. Thank you very much indeed for your input. Skylar is an immigration lawyer. Rwanda is the subject and the policy that we're talking about today. Thank you very much indeed. Coming up to 6:10 is the time. We're going to be returning to Michael later on as we discuss the Northern Irish Protocol. But the latest news bringing you up to date is this.
Well, as we've just been discussing, the Archbishops of Canterbury and York, along with 23 other bishops in the church, have called the asylum seekers' flight to Rwanda immoral. The first plane is to leave the UK this morning after a last-ditch legal challenge failed. Protesters have been held over the plans, but the government insists the policy is compliant and necessary.
Veterans of the Falklands War will mark the 40th anniversary of the end of the conflict with a service at the National Memorial Arboretum. On this day in 1982, the Argentinians surrendered after weeks of fighting. 255 British troops were killed. The Royal British Legion is inviting veterans and bereaved family members to the event.
And a series of memorial events will be held today to mark the 5th anniversary of the Grenfell Tower fire. A service will be held at Westminster Abbey this morning, where the names of all 72 men, women and children who died will be read out. The Abbey bell will also toll 72 times. I was flicking through the newspapers first thing this morning and I was thinking of, well, just reading up on what's been going on in the world, and I just saw this story and it made me think of you. It's inside the Mail this morning. It said, "Little nippers, why dogs are like surrogate children." And I thought of little Maggie.
Oh, yeah.
And how she really is your 5th child.
She is.
Your
I mean,
5th and
actually,
favourite.
I would put my children up for adoption, really, before I would get rid of my little rescue dog.
Is that right?
She is.
Aww.
I definitely, I think everybody in my house is at risk of being given away, except the dog. Changes
Is that
her
because
life.
Maggie doesn't give any back chat?
She gives me love.
Yeah,
She gives me
unconditional.
no questions asked, right? And doesn't seek anything in return. And I just feed her quite a lot.
Aww.
And that's it. So her and I get on quite well from that
I
point
do
of
think
view.
it's a thing. You know, I definitely would like an animal instead of a 3rd child.
Would you?
Yeah, I'm definitely at that stage where I'm ready to nurture a new life, but
A
definitely not a
rescue dog.
human one.
Adopt,
you can't
don't
when
shop.
you've got kids under
What?
7.
Just get an adopted dog.
You can't rescue dogs if you've got children under 7 because the bite risk, you don't know their past. So
My dog
children
has
are
the
so
loveliest temperament.
But it's probably
If
sensible.
my
kids will
wife
probably
had the
yank their
temperament
ears.
of my dog, that would be fine. Now listen, I'm going to give you. I've got 2 little presents for you,
me?
right?
I would have wondered what
For
you're
you.
rustling around
Look,
with.
you see?
Oh, a key
So
ring.
I was like,
Oh,
not
that's-
just any key
Oh,
ring.
right.
This is a key ring for the Elizabeth line.
Ooh.
So I was out yesterday and I was mobbed by 3 women. And they are Joyce and Lizzie and Rosemary, otherwise known as Joyful Joyce, Lovely Lizzie, and
Rosie Rosemary.
Rosie Rosemary, right? And they were community ambassadors for the Elizabeth line. Not that I was on the Elizabeth line.
Where
they
were you?
Well, they were out for their lunch, and they bumped.
gatecrashed?
They bumped into me, and they started explaining everything. I know everything there is to know about the
So,
Elizabeth
right, can
line.
you tell me why it's not up and running as far as Maidenhead just yet?
Oh, no, you've got me
Yeah, I knew
there.
it.
The girls were responsible for the Paddington area. That's
right.
what they were doing.
Fantastic.
So that was all there.
Do you know
So-
why I'm delighted with this?
Why?
Because you can remove this little disc that says Elizabeth Line.
Yes.
And you can put it into a shopping trolley and release without using a pound, because who has a pound anymore? No one ever has any coins.
Yeah.
So that will now go on my keyring, and I'll never be bereft of a trolley at the supermarket.
Why did you actually know that? Because they had to explain that to me.
Because I used to have one and I lost it because I couldn't get it out of the trolley at the
trolley
end.
thing.
So I'm thrilled with that. Thank you very much.
That's very
Not
good.
so thrilled
Do
with
they
this,
work
but
in
I'll pretend I'll give
airport?
it to one of my kids or something.
Yeah,
Not that I
airport
don't.
trolleys.
Yeah, it would work on airport trolleys.
see,
Anything
'cause
that
I
requires a £1.
I think it's ridiculous, airport trolleys,
Thank
that you
you.
have to put money into those. I mean, you're hardly going to nick an airport trolley, are you? And take it
You
home
never
with
know
you.
what criminals are into. I don't have that mindset.
Probably don't.
Who knows?
Probably don't.
Floats their
But
boat.
anyway, thanks, Joyce and Lizzie and Rosemary. Absolutely,
Aw.
absolutely lovely meeting you, and well done on all the good work you're doing for the Elizabeth line. Now, Britain could risk a war with the European Union as the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill is published.
Yeah, the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, says the new bill will be debated and voted on by Parliament, and that despite overriding parts of the protocol, it does not breach international law.
Well, however, some Conservative MPs are unhappy about this move, whilst Labour is warning the measures will indeed break international law.
Well, elsewhere, the European Union Vice President, Maros Sefcovic, says the move by the UK puts trade deals with the EU under pressure. Well, political commentator and former Conservative Party MP Michael Brown, who's already been with us on the show this morning, is here to give us his...
See, Michael's really interesting because he used to work at the Northern Ireland office, right? And so therefore, I think, Michael, a lot of people glaze over with this as to the complexities with this. Now, there are two things involved here. Border control, I suppose you could look at, but overridingly, however they dress it up, this is about getting the Democratic Unionist Party back in government and getting the Stormont institution up and running, or back up and running.
That's right. Short history, Eamonn. 30 years ago, when I was the Parliamentary Private Secretary to Sir Patrick Mayhew, the late Sir Patrick Mayhew, who was the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland in the John Major government, the early foundations were laid to enable Tony Blair, 5 years later, to sign the Good Friday Agreement in 1998. And everybody across the political spectrum in the United Kingdom for the last 25 years has hailed that agreement as bringing peace to Northern Ireland, enabling it to still remain a part of the United Kingdom, but having a relationship with the South. And if ever one day there is an overwhelming desire that there should be a border poll for the people of Northern Ireland to consider whether they wish to remain in the United Kingdom or become part of the Irish Republic. That facility is there. In the meantime, we have the opportunity of a Northern Ireland government with all the political parties having an input, and that fragile flower must not in any way be impeded by the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is doing that precisely. We cannot get the Assembly up and running because one part of the Assembly acknowledges that there is a serious problem with the protocol.
Can you explain to me then why the UK government agreed to it?
Right. Now, this is where dear old Boris, our friend the Prime Minister, probably thought that when he signed that agreement, in his anxiety to get Brexit done, sign on the dotted line, we can iron out on the assumption that the EU Commission is a reasonable body. There's one or two issues there, but I'm not going to stand in the way of this agreement. Sign on the dotted line. There it is, an international treaty with all the force of international law. Oh my God, there's one or two bits here that I think I can renegotiate. And then the EU, of course, are being very intransigent. And there is a suspicion, Eamonn, that the United States, the EU and the Irish Republic are using this very subtly to see if they can cause an element of disruption. But that fragile flower of the Northern Ireland Good Friday Agreement must not be impeded in any way, and it is by this protocol.
Although, you know, tensions with the United States, when you're trying to get a trade deal with them, really not good in a post-Brexit UK. We want to try and keep the Americans on side, keep that special relationship going. And just yesterday, Anthony Blinken's been saying to Liz Truss, we really want you to look again at this.
Well, I've got to be honest with you. We're in election year, Isabel, where the Americans are concerned, with the midterm congressional and Senate elections coming up in 3 or 4 months' time. And America always plays this game when there's a Democratic-controlled Congress and presidency. They've got an agenda on Ireland, generally speaking, history of family connections like Joe Biden. And I think that we're just going to have to acknowledge that there ain't going to be, regardless of the Northern Ireland Protocol difficulties, there ain't going to be any UK-US trade negotiations of a serious nature for some time. Probably not until after Boris has gone.
You say complications of a serious nature. Boris Johnson yesterday said, it's no big deal. Is it a big deal?
Yes, it is, because I fear that he is going to have trouble getting through Parliament. I have a suspicion that there will be a substantial rebellion of Tory MPs in the House of Commons.
And then the Lords.
And the Lords, I suspect, will delay proceedings. So we can all relax a bit. The EU can relax because I can't see royal assent being given to this in this session of Parliament. Yeah. I think the Parliament Act would have to be used, and that takes us into 2023. Whether Boris is still Prime Minister by then, I don't know. I have a suspicion, bluntly, that we're not going to make progress on any of this until there is another Prime Minister.
And does he know that? As in, is this about the short term, get the DUP in, get the Assembly, the institution up and running, and again, kick the can down the road, we'll worry about all of this later? Because I just want to say, we were showing some pictures there. Not everybody in Northern Ireland is disenchanted with this protocol. it works for a lot of people, and it puts Northern Ireland in a very advantageous position for a lot of businesses.
Momentarily it does, but I was listening on your programme a couple of weeks ago when you referred to the chairman of Marks and Spencer, Archie Norman, who used to be a Tory MP, saying that every single food product that's got meat in it has to be inspected by a vet before it leaves GB, Great Britain, and gets into the shops in Northern Ireland. Now, yes, there are winners and losers. Some people are doing very nicely out of the protocol because they're sourcing their products in Northern Ireland from the Irish Republic. But never forget, Northern Ireland is part of Britain's sovereign territory. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland doesn't belong to the United States, doesn't belong to the European Union, and doesn't belong to the Irish Republic. We must remember that it's part of our country. And if America had us telling it what to do over Puerto Rico or whatever, they'd soon start telling us to get lost.
OK.
Thank you.
Michael, thank you very much indeed. That's put the cat amongst the pigeons there. So whether you understand it, whether you don't, what do you think about the principle of border control or free trade and or getting the Stormont Institution up and running? Does that come first in terms of devolved government? So there it is on the screen, gbviews at gbnews.uk. And I think we're going to have a lot of subjects to cover today and to reflect today. And you can tweet at GB News as well.
Yeah, a couple of really emotive stories coming up in the programme this morning, one of which is the 5th anniversary. I can't believe it's been 5 years already since that devastating Grenfell Tower fire. We'll be speaking to a local resident who says the community is still reeling from that horrific night. That's after the forecast.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. Temperatures will be ticking up through the rest of this week, turning hot, especially by Friday. Some strong sunshine as well, but it's not blue skies everywhere. High pressure is dominating, but there are weather fronts at times just toppling into the northwest. So western parts of Scotland always keeping a fair bit of cloud and some outbreaks of rain, some across the northeast of Scotland this morning. That should be fizzling out. So much of eastern Scotland will be dry and bright. 1 or 2 isolated showers for southern Scotland. Most of Northern Ireland also set fair, and certainly for most of England and Wales. It's a cracking day, if you like. Sunny spells and temperatures ticking up. A coolish start out there right now, but temperatures by this afternoon widely over 20 degrees across the southern half of the UK, probably peaking at 24, maybe 25 across the southeast, just 13 or 14 in the northwest with that showery rain over the Highlands and the Western Isles. That'll continue to come and go through this evening. Otherwise, it's a dry evening, a beautiful evening with largely clear skies staying that way overnight as well. Temperatures will drop down with those clear skies and light winds. We'll keep some outbreaks of rain going across northern parts of Scotland. Into tomorrow, and it's a very similar day actually. We'll see again plenty of blue sky across England, Wales, much of southern and eastern Scotland. Bit of showery rain across the far northeast, and always some rain at times close to the Western Isles and the west coast. Maybe a bit more cloud pushing into Northern Ireland with a small chance of a shower here, but we should see sunny spells in Belfast and temperatures ticking up higher by tomorrow. We're looking more widely into the mid-20s across England and Wales, maybe 28 across the southeast. That's 82 in Fahrenheit. Again, cooler in the northwest where these weather fronts persist. The high pressure, though, still dominant for most through the rest of this week. As it ekes eastwards, hotter air arrives with temperatures set to peak across England and Wales on Friday, over 30 Celsius in some places.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents. Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
"26 minutes past the hour. Very good morning to you. Eamonn, Holmes, Isabel, Webster. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Still to come on today's programme, it's the 40th anniversary of the end of the Falklands War today, and we'll be hearing from British Army veteran Simon Weston, who shares his experience ahead of today's Royal British Legion service in Staffordshire. That's just before 7.
Okay. Also coming up in the next hour, chaos continuing across the country's airports. Hundreds of flights cancelled. We're going to be talking to the travel expert Simon Calder about what's being done to improve the situation, because he's sitting on a special committee advising how we actually literally get planes back in the sky and get airports working again, doing that just before 8 o'clock.
If anyone knows, he knows. Remember, we love to hear from you throughout the programme. Get involved in the conversations, the discussions. Email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us @gbnews. So today marks 5 years since the Grenfell Tower disaster, which saw 72 people lose their lives after a fire, which is believed to have started from a fridge freezer ripped through the 23-storey tower block in West London.
Now, that fire also revealed an enormous housing safety scandal, with many people still fighting for justice. Alice Porter with this.
Fire brigade.
Yeah, hello, hi. In the fire, flat 16 Grenfell Tower.
Sorry, a fire where?
Flat 16 Grenfell Tower.
It was one of the UK's worst modern disasters, as mothers, fathers, children and family members all perished in unimaginable circumstances. Survivors were left homeless, having lost almost all their belongings. Grief soon turned to anger. Theresa May immediately ordered a public inquiry as grieving relatives like Hamdan al-Alami demanded answers.
Here, my family here. Why? Day and night I no sleep. Always cry. I have 4 family died.
Soon after the fire, it quickly emerged that the flammable cladding on the block was central to the rapid spread of the fire. And it turned out that this cladding and other fire safety defects were found in tens of thousands of buildings across the country. Many became completely worthless, and leaseholders had to foot the bill to make them safe. Hayley Tillotson is one of them.
I actually went bankrupt at the end of 2020 because me and my neighbours in my flat in Leeds were paying for hundreds of pounds in Waking Watch, in new fire alarms and insuring and building insurance, and just loads of costs that we should never have had to pay because it just isn't our fault.
After mounting pressure, Housing Secretary Michael Gove announced in January that building developers would be the ones to remove dangerous cladding.
I'm clear about who should pay the price for remedying failures. It should be the industries who profited as they caused the problem and those who continue to profit as they make it worse. To those who missold dangerous products like cladding or insulation, to those who cut corners to save cash as they developed or refurbished people's homes, and to those who sought to profiteer from the consequences of the Grenfell tragedy, we are coming for you.
But since then, many argue that little has changed and that progress has been too slow. 2 weeks ago, the government banned the specific type of cladding which allowed the blaze to spread so rapidly, half a decade since the fire took place. But while debate over housing regulations continue and the much-delayed public inquiry into Grenfell rumbles on, a community continues to grieve. During the Jubilee weekend, a poignant street party was held close to the tower, with 72 empty chairs to commemorate those who died. Emma O'Connor is one of the survivors of the fire.
It should really be speaking volumes to the government that we care and your actions speak louder than words, and we don't see any government help. We just we're not even allowed the tower back under our control.
Grenfell Tower still looms over London's landscape like a gravestone, a constant reminder of all those who lost their lives. Alice Porter, GB News.
Well, that's the whole story, which I'm sure you remember very, very well. Here to get his take on what happened and what is yet to happen, local resident Joe Delaney. Joe, you didn't live in the tower, you lived nearby. What was your memory of the night?
My memory of the night was chaos, to be perfectly honest. You know, you expect more from the emergency services, at least. The police seem to be treating it as a crowd control issue, as if it was a, you know, carnival, as opposed to an emergency. And the fire service were just overwhelmed, you know, and there were no ambulances to be seen anywhere. It did just strike me as awfully confused. And even when councillors turned up, it was just as confusing then, because no one knew where to go. You know, people had to sleep rough in the shadow of that tower as it burned for 26 hours, I think, in total, as their loved ones were still in there dying. You know, that's going to have an effect on people, and it has had an effect on people.
Just tell us a little bit about how the night unfolded for you, because you were going to bed. It was in the early hours of the morning that the fire broke out. Can you just talk us through that night and how, you know, where you went afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, I had been on my way to bed. It was 5 to 1 in the morning when the fire started, and someone knocked my door about 2 minutes later and let me know it was happening. I went and had a look. By 1:30 in the morning, I was like, yeah, this is serious. We're probably going to be kicked out of these flats tonight. Helped a neighbour of mine pack a bag, get her and her kid out. I unfortunately saw people fall or jump from the tower at about 3 a.m. or so, and at that point I was done. I had to get out of the area. Thankfully, a friend of mine had contacted me who lived in Westbourne Park, and he said that I want to go to his. I walked up to Holland Park Station, he picked me up, and we drove back to his and just watched the horror unfold on TV.
And you didn't go home for years?
We were allowed access to the properties. The council kept saying we could go back at our own risk, but then they wouldn't tell us what those risks were. So it was just nonsense.
Joe, what got me right at the whole time was the lack of responsibility from central government. This isn't a local authority problem. This was a national disaster. And if this had have happened in a foreign country, it's almost you would have sent in emergency relief to a degree that you guys didn't receive in terms of accommodation. I mean, I never understand why Theresa May just didn't commandeer parkland, car parks, whatever, built the mini village for all the people who lived there and really give people dignity instead of stuffing them out to some sort of third-rate hotel room.
Yeah, but even a hotel room in the first instance, you know, I mean, but building a camp of some kind would have made sense, but hotel rooms made sense in the first instance. You know, all that would have taken was a mobile phone and a credit card, and it seemed it was beyond the wit of the council. We've now heard at the inquiry that basically the council was more interested in deleting records, according to the Cabinet Office. They were more interested in deleting things from the computers, and the leader of the council at the time, Nicholas Paget-Brown, was lobbying for the army to be brought in to deal with us.
Are you comfortable with the fact that it's taken 5 years and this commission still hasn't reported?
No, I wasn't comfortable from when we had Phase 1's report in October 2019 and none of it's been implemented. I didn't see any point in starting Phase 2. Why add more recommendations to the pile of ones that you've ignored? You know, and this inquiry is estimated to cost between 150 million and 250 million. You know, it's a waste of money if you're just going to commission a lengthy inquiry that goes into all this detail and then implement nothing of the recommendations. The only organisation that has been the fire service. They've got 26 of their 29 done. The government haven't implemented any at all.
And gosh, we also I always feel we have to pay tribute to those firefighters that went and did their very best in what was an awful situation for them as well. Tell us what the mood is amongst, your community. I mean, you're back there in the heart of that part of London, and there's still visceral anger, isn't there?
There is. There's still visceral anger and there's exasperation. In 2010, when we had the London riots, we had 24-hour courts. We've got evidence of people in emails conspiring to, defraud tests, or hide money that they've got, or inflate prices of certain materials compared to others, or cover up dangerous results that they got from any of their inspection or safety testing programs. None of these people have been prosecuted. The police have absolutely no excuse at this point whatsoever. It would be a simple win to even just prosecute one or two people right now, and that would send far more of a chilling effect through boardrooms across this country than any hot air that we hear from the House of Commons.
Joe, every day we come into work, we pass the Tower Block, we pass Grenfell. What? I know it's a crime scene and whatever at the moment. What is going to happen to it? Will it be demolished?
The government seem determined to demolish it. Personally, I think that, if in 10 or 15 years we're digging tumours out of our bodies, or, there are some issues with, people who are having kids or something like that, I'd rather the tower be preserved. Engineers
you mean in terms of dust in the air or the demolition?
Precisely, or who knows what materials are in it, because we still don't know what half of the materials in it actually did to people, and we still don't know what work they're doing on it after 5 years. It seems ridiculous. But, I mean, I would rather they built an exoskeleton around it, 4 vertical gardens, and we keep the tower inside that as a shrine, because ultimately it is the gravesite of at least 72 people.
Okay. Joe, really appreciate you talking today. All of it is very painful, continues to be painful. We wait for the results of that whole inquiry. But thank you very much indeed for your memories. Thank you very much.
We're going to take a break now. When we come back, we'll be talking to Norman Baker, and Amy Cameron will be taking us through your Tuesday morning newspaper. See you in a second.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Coming up to 20 to 7 on this Tuesday morning. Thanks for your company. This is Breakfast in GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
The Archbishops of Canterbury and York have called the asylum seekers' flight to Rwanda immoral. The first plane leaves the UK today as a last-ditch legal challenge failed. Protesters have been held over the plans, but the government insists the policy is compliant and necessary.
Veterans of the Falklands War will mark the 40th anniversary of the end of the conflict with a service at the National Memorial Arboretum. On this day in 1982, the Argentinians surrendered after weeks of fighting. 255 British troops were killed. The Royal British Legion is inviting veterans and bereaved family members to the event.
Scotland's First Minister is set to launch what she's calling an updated independence prospectus, updated from the 2014 referendum. Nicola Sturgeon says the document would set out the challenges a newly independent Scotland would face. She'll unveil the first in a new series of papers in Edinburgh today.
Here, going through the newspapers for you this morning, and we welcome into the studio Norman Baker and Amy Cameron. And Amy, I know you've chosen, we've just been discussing the 5th anniversary of Grenfell, and this is from The Guardian, and they asked the question, who was to blame?
Obviously, your last guest spoke so powerfully on this, and I can't match that, because that lived experience, I think, is something that's so hard for any of us to comprehend unless you were there or around it. Even as a Londoner, I think the memory of that night still, sort of looms so large in your mind. And I think I've heard survivors and family members speak about this as a tragedy in 3 parts. In the first instance, these residents had been raising concern around this building for months and were being completely ignored. We know already from the outcomes that we've seen so far from the inquiry that mistakes were definitely made on the night itself that cost lives. And then I think this question of who's to blame has now rumbled on for 5 years. So I don't oppose the need for a public inquiry, but I think there are real questions about why no individuals have yet been brought to justice. I think, unfortunately, so much of the problem is tied up with that current reality, which is that there were countless bodies involved in this, and there are countless bodies involved in the execution of so many of our sort of public services now, that you have this culture of not me. You know, that guy, and then that guy says it's the other guy further down the line. There were 27 commercial organisations and 8 public bodies involved in the management and maintenance and the building of Grenfell, and I think that it's so difficult to unpick. But I don't think, and I can't speak on their behalf, but from the really powerful testimonies in papers today, I don't think that justice will be served until individuals are held responsible. And I think your previous guest mentioned this. This needs to strike into the heart of boardrooms. People had profited off the insulation.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. If you have profited, if you have taken money, you have a responsibility, surely.
Absolutely. And I think this concept of kind of corporate manslaughter, it's so important in a context like this. Decisions were made, whether they were in a boardroom months before or on the night itself, that led to people's deaths. And I think that can't be diminished.
Yeah, and Norman, you know, the fact that it's taken, well, we're talking about this at 5 years, and as Amy says, no one's been held responsible. It doesn't help those people who are suffering with long-term post-traumatic stress, whether it's through losing loved ones or having survived it themselves. Justice needs to be served so that everyone can move on, as well as for its own sake.
Well, stating the obvious, you can't undo what's happened, unfortunately, and people are suffering continually now as a consequence of that and will suffer for the rest of their lives. But, of course, you can try and get some closure on the event to some degree by investigating properly as to what happened and holding people responsible who have taken actions or not taken actions that should have been taken. And particularly, I think it's important to make sure that people who are in senior positions don't escape responsibility. It's very easy in these situations to find a small person somewhere down the line and say, you didn't push this button. But actually, the responsibility lies with big companies for the reasons Amy's given.
Just on that, I just wanted to ask, because the public inquiry ends next month, I mean, are the findings likely to hold somebody responsible? Will that lead, do you think, to prosecutions, or is it a police investigation that needs to be concluded? I'm not clear at what point blame might be apportioned.
Well, I think that's not clear either to me, but I think what could happen is that there could be a responsibility allocated in general terms, and that would be for the police and the Crown Prosecution Service to take forward individuals if they need to take them forward.
OK, look, let's cover some other news. Keir Starmer, we go to the Times, Amy, online in the Times.
It's made me laugh as well.
And the headline is, "Stop boring everybody to death, the shadow cabinet tells their leader."
I mean, I have some sympathy with Keir. This is a criticism that's probably being levelled at me when I appear on the show with you guys.
You're never dull.
Not by you guys, I assume.
Not at all.
For once, I don't actually wholly disagree with the sentiment in the Times here. Unfortunately, I think we are seeing repeatedly in polling that despite Labour making gains, Keir Starmer is still currently lagging behind Boris Johnson as a preferred leader of the UK. Important to note that they both lag behind anyone else. Sort of another is still the most popular choice for the public in terms of a leader. It's a fairly damning indictment of Keir Starmer, given the current position of Boris Johnson, of our current Prime Minister. And I think what this story focuses on is a claim around, well, not a claim, the standards body in the Parliament are investigating late submissions for other earnings and gifts that Keir Starmer was given. I don't think there's much to that story in and of itself. It seems largely to be an administrative error, which they are addressing. However, what it's demonstrative of is no one in the Labour Party is that interested in going out to really bat for Keir Starmer. So when these small grievances come up, one, I think they undermine his entire platform, which is that I'm Mr. Rules. And you can't build that platform and then have that be dismantled underneath you. And two, I think the papers are able to kind of bat this stuff at him all the time. And the public are just not sufficiently energised to disregard it. So I think the Labour Party are making gains. That is important to note. And I think post these by-elections that are coming up, I think they will increase in confidence. We've seen some policy wins. Obviously, the windfall tax was originally Labour policy that was adopted. But I think we need more.
Get all that. They need more, and he needs more personality. We actually talked about this in the programme yesterday, quite coincidentally. How important is it for the leader of a party to have charisma, to have personality, to have a bit of stardust?
Well, it helps, I think, but actually it's not essential, because if you think back to Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, Tony Blair had pizzazz, if you like, and actually when Gordon Brown came along, people said, thank goodness someone's a bit boring in number 10, because it had enough Blair at that particular point.
Do you know the thing about Gordon Brown, and you will have seen this, I've seen Gordon Brown privately, off camera, talking and holding audiences. He's a brilliant orator.
Yes, he is, and also he's a very principled person.
Yes,
and I think he was a good chancellor, not a very good prime minister. But actually, I think he's out there now doing stuff for charity and not making any fuss about it.
Yeah, a lot of Afghanistan stuff.
I imagine that's probably true of Sir Keir Starmer. To have been a successful barrister and to be director of public prosecutions, you have to be able to construct an argument and to hold court, literally.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't translate into leader of the party. Do you remember when Ed Miliband had to have surgery to try and sort out his nasal voice?
Yeah.
I wonder, is there some sort of... I mean, this is a terribly personal comment, but do you think that he appears a bit boring because his voice is a little bit sort of thin from sort of nasal... I don't know, there's just something in his vocal delivery. It's not very impressive.
I'm less worried about his pizzazz and more worried about his lack of policies, to be honest. I think the whole package of Keir Starmer was supposed to be, and I'm, a self-proclaimed lefty, was supposed to be lefty policies in a sort of publicly palatable, slightly bland figure. I think what we've ended up with is the slightly bland figure and a real absence of the policies. That's my concern. I'm not so worried about the razzle-dazzle. I worry that's taken Boris Johnson way beyond his competency, and I don't particularly want to see that replicated. I would be much more amenable to Keir Starmer, who appears competent, but right now I think he's not a visionary. I think that's what we're lacking, is a vision.
What do you think of Keir Starmer? Let us know today.
That'll be predictable, right?
Maybe Mrs. Starmer might like to get... because you don't like to hear your loved one being referred as dull, would you?
Sorry.
Would you?
Would I? Oh no, I couldn't. I can say what I want about my husband, but anyone else?
Quite right. Norman, what would you like to choose? Last choice here. You've got a lot on offer here. What would you like to?
Well, there's a lot, isn't there? Well, I think the Northern Ireland Protocol is clearly in the news, and it's going to remain in the news for some time. And this whole situation, I have to say, is entirely predictable, because if you go back to the negotiations over Brexit, it's very clear there had to be a border between the UK and the EU. I mean, obviously you do, as an independent country, there had to be a border. And the discussion at the time, if you recall, was should it be on the island of Ireland, or should it be somewhere else, namely in the Irish Sea? And because of the Northern Ireland Protocol, we need to make sure we don't have walls and everything else re-established in Ireland with all the threats to the peace process. The decision was taken by the EU and by the British government that the border should be in the Irish Sea. Now, the DUP were shafted, quite frankly, at that particular point because they didn't want that to occur. And what's happening now is entirely predictable. The DUP is holding the government to ransom and the government is caving in.
But it might be predictable, but what would you do to resolve it if it wasn't this? Because you can see the reasons that Liz Truss is putting forward to try and break the deadlock in Stormont, to try and make sure that there isn't this ongoing friction that's built up on the border.
Well, dare I say, and Amy says she's a committed lefty, I'm a committed Remainer in the EU.
Yeah, we're going to get abuse.
If we'd been in the EU, we'd never have had the situation arise. But given where we are...
Yeah, exactly,
of
because
course.
we know the arguments, yeah.
Well, hope you're not accusing me of being a politician, not answering the question. Given where we are now, the answer has got to be to sit down with the EU. And I know it's difficult, and I know there are problems either side, but, you know, the government itself admits we're breaking international law.
Yes, but the EU are being inflexible and being very literal in their interpretation of the rules, and there doesn't appear to be any movement there. I just don't know what the solution is, and I think, you know, it's got to be fixed.
Boris Johnson signed it.
I know we are where we are, and we can argue about that, but we have to fix it, right?
Well, we don't know if the EU's being inflexible. We're told that by the British government they're being inflexible. We don't actually know that. We're not party to the discussion.
And also, I'd like to point out again, an awful lot of people are very happy with the protocol in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
This is about, we'll make out this is about border control, could well be, makes the government look good on that, but it's basically about getting the Democratic Unionist Party to take up their elected seats in Scotland.
And they lost the election, and they're holding the country to ransom.
Yes.
They lost.
Yeah, I suppose that's the way you look at it. Thanks very much indeed, guys. Really appreciate that. Norman and Amy will be back again, and I hope they've woken you up on this Tuesday morning.
I look forward to the emails after that.
Now, today, Isabel and I were saying there are just so many significant things in the news today, and we won't have much joy for you today. But today marks 40 years since the liberation of the Falkland Islands.
Yeah, one of the enduring images of the Falklands conflict was that of Simon Weston. The soldier in the Welsh Guards was on board RFA Sir Galahad when the vessel was bombed and set on fire by Argentine fighter jets.
Well, he received horrendous burns, 46% burns, his face severely disfigured. Simon has spent the past 40 years raising funds for Falkland veterans, and to commemorate the anniversary, he's helping to release a single and asking for musicians to come forward to help.
Well, our reporter Jeff Moody went to meet him.
For 40 years, he's been the face of the Falklands conflict, a face that reminds us of the darkness of war, but also the light at the end of it. But it comes at a price.
For me, I was waking up in the middle of the night, rolling round on the bedroom floor. I was on fire again, and what would wake me up was, in my nightmare, was a black jet screaming overhead with a hooded figure with flaming demonic eyes.
The nightmares have passed. Time is a healer. Today, the soldier and survivor has teamed up with soprano Carly Williams to release a single to raise funds for the Falklands Veterans Foundation.
It's hugely important, you know, and it's a beautiful song. And, you know, Carly sings it beautifully. But I totally agree that it's such a big song that it needs to have that big sound behind it.
So the hunt is on for that big sound. They're appealing to orchestras to come forward and volunteer to help re-release this single.
If we had an orchestra, it would just lift it slightly. It's very beautiful at the moment with the piano, but the real aim is for the orchestra to hopefully come in and lift it and do performances like memorials and events that take place in memory. It is currently on Spotify, the song, and on Amazon Music, and all of the proceeds go towards the charity. But we're quite keen to get it released with an orchestral sound. So if anyone would like to take part, then we'd be delighted to hear from them.
For Simon, funding has never been more important.
You know, and there are different triggers as to what happens in mental health, what kicks it off, and what makes you spiral in one way or lift in another. And there are different triggers for everybody. So, you know, whether it's euphoria or dismay, but we have to try and work harder. But there just aren't enough psychiatrists and psychologists who specialise in this area in the country, you know. So we can knock people or knock the system as much as we would like, but it's not going to change the fact there aren't enough people to do the job.
As the 40th anniversary brings the conflict into sharper focus, calls are growing now for Simon to receive a knighthood. It's news to him.
If it does happen, it does happen. But I'm not going to live my life in hope for something to happen. There's unbelievably large amounts of people in this country who deserve to be recognised for many, many things. And there are people that go unrecognised all their lives and they make such a massive difference in so many people's lives. So I think I'll leave that to the powers that be. It's nothing to do with me. I'm not involved in it. I don't know anything about anybody particularly starting anything or wanting to do anything. But if it does come around, it comes around. But you know, I don't live in hope of that one.
Simon might not, but there are plenty who do. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And let us know how you're marking or remembering the end of the war, or how you do remember the war. Maybe you served, maybe you know someone, maybe someone in your family served.
Perhaps you're going to the Arboretum in Staffordshire today. Let us know if you are remembering that at all today, and remembering Grenfell as well. We'd love to hear your stories, and we'll try and read out as many of those as we can throughout the program.
Lots of response to the Rwanda situation. I mean, that flight is due to take off today. We reckon maybe as few as 8 passengers on board. Your views, Paul, saying at the very minimum, this is food for thought for the migrants. Charles says the fact the flights are taking place will stop the crossings happening in the first place. There will then be no need to fly anybody to Rwanda, as the boats will stop. Good policy, I think.
Martin disagrees. It serves no purpose, he says. It's a swap deal that will see us take more than we send, and we pay for the privilege. I did read some stat about the cost of sending somebody to Eton, and it'd be cheaper to send these migrants to Eton than to send them to these centres in.
Let us know. Keep the views coming in. 3 minutes now before 7 o'clock. We're going to be back right after this.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. Temperatures will be ticking up through the rest of this week, turning hot, especially by Friday. Some strong sunshine as well, but it's not blue skies everywhere. High pressure is dominating, but there are weather fronts at times just toppling into the northwest. So western parts of Scotland always keeping a fair bit of cloud and some outbreaks of rain, some across the northeast of Scotland this morning. That should be fizzling out. So much of eastern Scotland will be dry and bright. 1 or 2 isolated showers for southern Scotland. Most of Northern Ireland also set fair, and certainly for most of England and Wales. It's a cracking day, if you like. Sunny spells and temperatures ticking up. A coolish start out there right now, but temperatures by this afternoon widely over 20 degrees across the southern half of the UK, probably peaking at 24, maybe 25 across the southeast, just 13 or 14 in the northwest, with that showery rain over the Highlands and the Western Isles. That'll continue to come and go through this evening. Otherwise, it's a dry evening, a beautiful evening with largely clear skies, staying that way overnight as well. Temperatures will drop down with those clear skies and light winds. We'll keep some outbreaks of rain going across northern parts of Scotland. Into tomorrow, and it's a very similar day actually. We'll see again plenty of blue sky across England, Wales, much of southern and eastern Scotland. Bit of showery rain across the far northeast, and always some rain at times close to the Western Isles and the west coast. Maybe a bit more cloud pushing into Northern Ireland with a small chance of a shower here, but we should see sunny spells in Belfast, and temperatures ticking up higher by tomorrow. We're looking more widely into the mid-20s across England and Wales, maybe 28 across the southeast. That's 82 in Fahrenheit. Again, cooler in the northwest where these weather fronts persist. The high pressure, though, still dominant for most through the rest of this week. As it ekes eastwards, hotter air arrives, with temperatures set to peak across England and Wales on Friday, over 30 Celsius in some places.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
and we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The first flight carrying asylum seekers to Rwanda will take off today despite protests from critics.
A very good morning to you. It has just passed 7 o'clock. It's 1 minute past 7. It is Tuesday, the 14th of June. You're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The first flight to Rwanda will leave later today after a decision from the Court of Appeal. That's despite a letter from the Archbishops of Canterbury and York, as well as 23 other bishops, calling the decision immoral and a policy that shames Britain.
The European Union has opposed the government's plans to scrap parts of the post-Brexit deal between the UK and Northern Ireland, arguing it breaches international law. The Foreign Secretary says it is a reasonable, practical solution and it will improve the flow between the two countries. We're going to be speaking to her just before 9 o'clock this morning.
Today marks 5 years since the Grenfell Tower fire, which claimed the lives of 72 people, including 18 children. The tragedy, which uncovered an enormous housing safety scandal in the UK, has left many people still fighting for justice.
And it's the 40th anniversary of the end of the Falklands War. We're going to be live from the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire to remember the end of the conflict.
And remember, you can join in any of our discussions. As always, we love to include you in all of our debates. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
And you can subscribe to the GB News YouTube channel, and you get the latest on the big stories and all the info coming out of GB News. Please do that.
So our top story this morning, and that first flight carrying asylum seekers to Rwanda has been cleared to take off later today following yesterday's Court of Appeal ruling.
Well, the number of passengers on board has been significantly reduced. It was originally to be 31. It is now standing at 8. And charities are still hopeful that that flight could be stopped altogether by a separate injunction in the High Court.
Well, campaigners have argued that the policy will put migrants at risk, and the Church of England has called the decision immoral. But officials are determined to go ahead, saying the strategy will deter people from making dangerous channel crossings.
The Home Office has also said that the plan is in the public interest. It shouldn't be stopped. And I have to say, everybody, from your point of view, getting in touch with us today, that reflects the way you are thinking. Tom says this policy is a start. More of these flights should be leaving every day. More than 10,000 illegal immigrants have landed this year that we know of. It's completely unsustainable. Brian says, if it ultimately allows legitimate asylum seekers to come to the UK, then I support it, but we cannot stop our attempts to bring people into this country as it fundamentally keeps Britain a sustainable nation.
Interesting. Well, look, we're joined now by journalist and author of Do Not Disturb, the story of a political murder and an African regime gone bad. That is Michaela Wrong, who joins us as well as the political commentator and former Conservative Party MP, Michael Brown. Very warm welcome back to you and welcome to the programme to you. Michaela, first of all, this intervention from the Archbishop of Canterbury and York and these 23 bishops, whether or not you agree with their views, they are there to be sort of a moral compass to the country. It is a Christian country. They sit in the House of Lords. They have the capacity, potentially, to put a bit of a spanner in the works. How significant are their comments?
Well, I agree. I think it's literally their job description to have to express their views on these kind of matters. How significant it is, I don't think it's going to be stopping Priti Patel, who seems to be, dead set on this policy. This is very much part of her drive to impress on people that she's serious about tackling immigration. So I don't think it'll have much impact.
What's your particular objection to the policy? Is it the destination? Because I know your book focuses very much on Rwanda, and we of course know the tragedies of the genocide there and questions about its humanitarian record in current terms. Or is it the policy itself?
I'm not a refugee expert. I mean, I think there are major question marks about offshoring refugees, and I can see that there's a need for a radical sort of examination of refugee conventions, which, the law, it just isn't working for a whole host of countries. Britain isn't the only person considering introducing these kind of policies. Denmark's about to do the same. Israel's tried it in the past. And as we know, Australia's also done it. But my shtick is as an a writer about Africa, is the choice of Rwanda. It's a very inappropriate choice. In fact, I can't really think of anywhere worse to choose.
How did this come about, Michaela? Tell us, I mean, obviously you have your concerns. Most of us are completely uneducated about Rwanda. What are your concerns in particular? Why is the regime gone wrong?
It's a country that's rebuilt itself amazingly since the genocide of 1994. Massive reconstruction, and it ticks a lot of development boxes, which is why a lot of Western governments, aid donors, are very keen on it. But it's also got a terrible human rights record. And if you read any of the reports by Human Rights Watch or Amnesty International or Freedom House, you'll see that arbitrary arrests, disappearances, extrajudicial killings, torture in prison, all of these are widespread and repeated. And British officials have expressed their concerns on that subject. Just last year they did in Geneva at a UN meeting. So these things are known to British officials, but suddenly we're sort of forgetting that because we're so desperate.
Michaela, if they were monitored, if they were policed by international or British officials, would that in any way put your mind at ease?
I'm sure they will be policed at the beginning, when these refugees go out there. I just can't see how long-term it's going to work. It's a very overpopulated country. What are these refugees going to do? It's, they've got 130,000 refugees living in tented camps already in Rwanda. There's no...
Excuse me, why does Rwanda want these refugees? Is this purely a business transaction?
I think there's definitely an element of, Rwanda was about to see its budget cut, its aid budget cut, because Britain's cutting aid around the world. So it's going to be getting £120 million extra that it wasn't anticipated as part of this deal. I'm sure that's just a down payment. But I think it's more about kudos. President Paul Kagame likes to be the problem fixer in Africa. He sends peacekeepers around Africa. He likes to present himself to Western allies as, you've got some sort of tricky issue, I can step forward, I can solve your problems.
Am I right in thinking that he won the last election by some huge majority, like 96%, which just any democratic nation suggests that perhaps it wasn't free and fair?
He regularly wins elections with over 90% of the vote. The last one was nearly 99% of the vote. So I think we know that the elections are rigged. his former aides have said as much.
That being said, it's not just the UK that thinks that Rwanda is a suitable place to send asylum seekers. The United Nations itself has an asylum centre there, which is housing people wanting to go to Canada and to Sweden, people fleeing from Libya. So it's not just the British government that have thought it was suitable, but also the United Nations.
Yeah, the UN used Rwanda. Rwanda stepped forward and offered its services when there was this crisis situation in Libya where people were being treated absolutely appallingly. And Rwanda did step forward. The UNHCR has been very grateful. It has said as much. But we're talking about a different kind of policy here, one that in theory could go on for years. And my concern is about all these young men who are fleeing repressive governments and will find themselves in a very repressive society, a very conformist society as well, a Christian society, a society where they don't speak the language. Are they really going to stay? I don't think so.
Well, you make a very impassioned case there, Michaela. You obviously know what you're talking about and putting it out there. I just want to bring Michael Brown in here from a political perspective. And the problem, I mean, we hear firsthand from Michaela and her concerns. We have talked earlier in the programme, that is not really reflected. The audience we have gathered yesterday and today, they're sort of saying, well, it might be somewhat unfortunate, but actually until someone thinks of something else better, we'll go along with this.
Well, it's a suboptimal solution. I'm perfectly ready to concede that. But what do we do? This country has endured, I think you mentioned the figure of 10,000 illegal immigrants brought here by the most awful criminal gangs with no sign that that is going to stop. The EU simply does not want the problem. Everybody ends up on the coastline of northern France and Belgium.
I was looking that up, and according to the House of Commons Library, in 2020, Germany housed 62,500 asylum seekers, Spain 51,000, Greece 34,300. They were the top three. We didn't come anywhere close to that.
But they're not coming into those countries in the illegal way in which they're coming here.
But there is no legal way for asylum seekers to get into this country.
Isabel, the international law says that if you seek refugee status, you claim that status in the country in which you land. When you end up in France, France is not a dangerous country, as far as I know, and the EU is determined to shirk its responsibilities, France in particular. We cannot, if some solution is not found, at what point do the British public say to the elected government, and it is the elected government, by the way, we don't elect the Archbishop of Canterbury. If we did, we might not have the present one. We don't elect the Prince of Wales. If we did, we might not have the present one. We elect a government, and a government puts its policies in a manifesto, which it did in 2019 with an overwhelming majority endorsement by the people, and the government has a responsibility to the people to carry out its election promises.
Yeah, and I understand that, but as you yourself admitted, this is an imperfect plan. Do you think that will actually deliver that promise?
I'm prepared to concede that the jury is out on whether it will work, but if nothing else, what does the government do? And you mentioned the figure, Eamonn, by the way, of 10,000. That's only 10,000 that we count that get off the inflatable boats. We do not know the thousands that get elsewhere on the South Coast.
I think if I'm reading Michaela right, and forgive me if I'm putting words in your mouth here, you're saying, well, if we've got to do this, send them to Australia or send them to somewhere with a country that has a human rights notable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't sort of tend to comment on the refugee issue because I think it's a very thorny problem and I'm not an expert on it. But yeah, I wouldn't send them to Rwanda. You don't send them to a country that has immense security issues because it's in a very turbulent region and there's actually fighting on the border of Rwanda, which Rwanda is being accused of fomenting. So there's fierce fighting.
May I just ask one final question? A lot of people will be familiar with the movie Hotel Rwanda, which focuses on a specific story, but brings to life the horrors of that genocide. Am I right in thinking that the family that story is told, their relatives are actually in jail at the moment?
The Hotel Rwanda hero, Paul Rusesabagina, is in jail. He was renditioned. He was basically kidnapped from where he was living in Texas by the government, which wanted him in jail because it accuses him of all sorts of terrorist crimes. He's serving a 25-year sentence. There are, I think, 16 opposition activists in jail at the moment. There are loads of bloggers and citizens, journalists. It's not a great place to send people who are trying to find some form of freedom in their lives.
And as you say, you raised a very worrying point there, particularly the young men, of which most of these migrants are. What about the future? What's going to happen to them? What future would they have in that country?
You know, do they want to become peasant farmers? Because that's the way most Rwandans survive. And then there's an issue of, is the land available? Because, as I said, it's the most overpopulated country in Africa.
Well, as you say, a hugely thorny subject, no obvious solution to it. Michaela Wrong and Michael Brown, thank you so much indeed.
But you know, Michael, the other thing is, I think we've got a situation where we're very sympathetic to people who flee Ukraine because we know the story, we know what's happening to them. I just think these poor people that we're talking about, we just don't know what they have fled from.
Oh, absolutely. Look, humanity obviously always intrudes on any political issue, a problem. But the fact is, the British people are not going to cope with, in terms of the way they vote, if none of the political parties are able to address this issue. Then you get extremism rearing its head and getting elected.
Yeah, sad but true. Michael, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. We'll leave it there. Michaela's book, I just want to tell you, Michaela's book is called Do Not Disturb. It is the story of a political murder and an African regime gone bad.
And recently shortlisted for the Orwell Prize.
Thank you.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
Right, with the time at 7:15, let's bring you up to date on your Tuesday morning headlines and some breaking news for you in the last few moments. The latest employment figures have just been released, and according to the Office for National Statistics, the number of UK workers on payrolls have risen again by 90,000 between April and May to 29.6 million.
Veterans of the Falklands War will mark the 40th anniversary of the end of the conflict with a service at the National Memorial Arboretum. On this day in 1982, the Argentinians surrendered after weeks of fighting. 255 British troops were killed. The Royal British Legion is inviting veterans and bereaved family members to the event. And I just want to go back to Michael Brown on this because he was a young parliamentarian at the time. He was a young MP when the end of the war was announced. An historic day. What were your memories of that?
I can remember it as though it was yesterday. I was 31 years of age. I've been in the House of Commons 3 years and throughout the duration of the Falklands conflict. And I can remember the 14th of June. I think it is the 14th of June today,
it is
obviously.
Today, yes, yeah.
And I was sat in on the government benches, and the whole House was relieved. And we did cheer. Yes, we did. We had a minor gloat. You're not allowed to gloat these days, but we did have a minor gloat that we had won a great victory at a cost, 255 soldiers. I saw the interview that you carried a few minutes ago with Simon Weston, and let's not forget that no war is pretty, but that was a war which could have gone even more horribly wrong with even more casualties, and we could have lost. But the cheers, I can still hear the cheers, and I can still hear that voice. Mr. Speaker, it is with great pleasure that I am able to announce today that the Union flag now flies over the Governor's residence in Port Stanley. Cheers. Cue Michael Brown and 650 other members of Parliament from all sides of the House. I'll never forget that
Well,
day.
thanks for sharing that memory, Michael. Really appreciate it. If you have a memory to share, mightn't be able to match Michael's, might be able to trump it. Who knows? Let us know. GBviews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at gbnews.
Well, look, speaking of anniversaries and memories, today actually marks the 5th anniversary since the Grenfell Tower disaster, which saw 72 people lose their lives. That was after a fire which is believed to have started from a fridge freezer ripped through the 23-storey tower block in West London.
And that fire also revealed an enormous housing safety scandal in Britain, with many people still fighting for justice. Alice Porter with the story.
Fire brigade.
Yeah, hello, hi. In the fire, flat 16 Grenfell Tower.
Sorry, a fire where?
Flat 16 Grenfell Tower.
It was one of the UK's worst modern disasters, as mothers, fathers, children and family members all perished in unimaginable circumstances. Survivors were left homeless, having lost almost all their belongings. Grief soon turned to anger. Theresa May immediately ordered a public inquiry as grieving relatives like Hamdan al-Alami demanded answers.
My family here. Why? Day and night I no sleep. Always crying. I have 4 family died.
Soon after the fire, it quickly emerged that the flammable cladding on the block was central to the rapid spread of the fire. And it turned out that this cladding and other fire safety defects were found in tens of thousands of buildings across the country. Many became completely worthless, and leaseholders had to foot the bill to make them safe. Hayley Tillotson is one of them.
I actually went bankrupt at the end of 2020 because me and my neighbours in my flat in Leeds were paying for hundreds of pounds in waking watch, in new fire alarms and insuring and building insurance, and just loads of costs that we should never have had to pay because it just isn't our fault.
After mounting pressure, Housing Secretary Michael Gove announced in January that building developers would be the ones to remove dangerous cladding.
I'm clear about who should pay the price for remedying failures. It should be the industries who profited as they caused the problem and those who continue to profit as they make it worse. To those who missold dangerous products like cladding or insulation, to those who cut corners to save cash as they developed or refurbished people's homes, and to those who sought to profiteer from the consequences of the Grenfell tragedy, we are coming for you.
But since then, many argue that little has changed and that progress has been too slow. 2 weeks ago, the government banned the specific type of cladding which allowed the blaze to spread so rapidly, half a decade since the fire took place. But while debate over housing regulations continue and the much-delayed public inquiry into Grenfell rumbles on, a community continues to grieve. During the Jubilee weekend, a poignant street party was held close to the tower, with 72 empty chairs to commemorate those who died. Emma O'Connor is one of the survivors of the fire.
It should really be speaking volumes to the government that we care and your actions speak louder than words, and we don't see any government help. We just we're not even allowed the tower back under our control.
Grenfell Tower still looms over London's landscape like a gravestone, a constant reminder of all those who lost their lives. Alice Porter, GB News.
Now go live to Alice, who is in North Kensington now, and they're in London. And Alice, we're talking about the anniversary, 5 years. Do people mark it, and if so, how do they mark it?
Hi there, good morning. Yes, there are a number of commemorative events which are taking place across London today. Later this morning at Westminster Abbey, there's a memorial service held there. At Westgate Shopping Centre, there's also going to be a 72-second silence to commemorate those who've died. And at Grenfell Tower itself, there'll be a service for bereaved families to remember those who died, because for many people, this is very much an issue that is very much important to so many people, partly because of the fallout from the Grenfell Tower, which exposed a massive housing safety scandal. And I'm joined now by Liam Spender from End Our Cladding Scandal. Now, Liam, I know this is an issue that is very dear to your heart because you live in a flat and own a flat which has cladding.
Yes, that's right. So obviously something that troubles me quite a lot of the time.
And just explain what that means in terms of the safety of your flat, but also in terms of how it affects you financially. I mean, presumably it's devalued the value of your property.
Yes, I mean, that's the main consideration, what effects it's had on the value. But it's always at the back of your mind, if there were to be a fire, what would happen?
We're looking at this, I mean, this sort of 5 years on. I suppose the main question that many people will be wondering today, what has changed? I mean, I was saying in my piece there that it's only been just over 2 weeks that the government banned the specific cladding that was used at Grenfell. I mean, there'll be many people today who are saying there hasn't been enough change. I mean, you've been campaigning on this issue for some years now. I mean, what do you think?
I think the government can and should have done much more than it's done a lot sooner than now, and it's unacceptable that, having failed to regulate in the years leading up to Grenfell, as the Grenfell Tower inquiry is showing us, that the government still isn't on the regulatory ball.
Yes, because they haven't adopted anywhere fewer than, I believe, half the recommendations that have been put forward in the inquiry. I mean, considering we are 5 years on and nobody has faced any criminal charges, I mean, as a lawyer yourself, I mean, that must be quite frustrating for a lot of people.
Exactly, particularly given we're looking at sort of £200 million that's been spent on the inquiry, and it's no one is to be held accountable, at least so far. And you'd have thought, given the myriad failings that Grenfell revealed, that someone should be held accountable.
Yeah, I think it's the accountability is key here, because I think when we're talking about money, whether it's money that's been spent on the inquiry, I mean, it's important to stress we're standing here right with the tower behind us, and when we're looking at 5 years on, whether it's issues to do with safety with buildings, it's really important that at the heart of this, 72 people lost their lives. Many families were left homeless without any of their possessions. And so today I think it's important that we mark that. And I suppose really it's also a question of not wanting it to happen again. And that's why it's such an important issue.
Absolutely. 72 people should never have lost their lives as a result of regulatory failings that are still not fixed. But as you say, today is about remembering the 72 people who've died, and we continue our campaign to make sure they didn't die in vain.
Well, Liam, thank you so much for speaking to me today. Really, really appreciate it. I think it's going to be quite a sombre mood in London today, as so many people remember the images of that fire which burned so strongly in the early hours of the morning, and many people will be taking, I think, a moment to remember all those 72 people who lost their lives.
Right, and you know, describing it burned so strongly. It burned so strongly into our memories. I mean, we can all remember where we were that night. I was actually just down there the morning after, and I'll never forget the aftermath. The smell, the whole
the horror, because it was like almost you couldn't believe what you were seeing on television.
Well, and also they tried to put out the fire for days. I mean, there were firefighters, and you know, you kept thinking they could put drones in or something, but you could still see the embers glowing for days after, and you know, knowing that there were family members in there for some people.
And we had a guest earlier who talked about people jumping and all that sort of thing. So sad, and yet Alice is standing there in a sun-bathed street today.
Thanks very much.
Obviously with Grenfell Tower behind her there to this day, and we're talking about what will happen to that eventually.
It was a beautiful day that morning. I mean, that was the horror of it. Yeah, it was beautiful blue skies, and then this just...
Like today.
Exactly, just like today.
OK, look, it's 26 minutes past 7 o'clock. Thanks for your company. After the break, we're going to pay tribute to the veterans of the Falklands War, 40 years on.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. Temperatures will be ticking up through the rest of this week, turning hot, especially by Friday. Some strong sunshine as well, but it's not blue skies everywhere. High pressure is dominating, but there are weather fronts at times just toppling into the northwest. So western parts of Scotland always keeping a fair bit of cloud and some outbreaks of rain, some across the northeast of Scotland this morning. That should be fizzling out. So much of eastern Scotland will be dry and bright. One or two isolated showers for southern Scotland. Most of Northern Ireland also set fair, and certainly for most of England and Wales. It's a cracking day, if you like. Sunny spells and temperatures ticking up. A coolish start out there right now, but temperatures by this afternoon widely over 20 degrees across the southern half of the UK, probably peaking at 24, maybe 25 across the southeast, just 13 or 14 in the northwest, with that showery rain over the Highlands and the Western Isles. That'll continue to come and go through this evening. Otherwise, it's a dry evening, a beautiful evening with largely clear skies staying that way overnight as well. Temperatures will drop down with those clear skies and light winds. We'll keep some outbreaks of rain going across northern parts of Scotland. Into tomorrow, and it's a very similar day actually. We'll see again plenty of blue sky across England, Wales, much of southern and eastern Scotland. Bit of showery rain across the far northeast, and always some rain at times close to the Western Isles and the west coast. Maybe a bit more cloud pushing into Northern Ireland with Small chance of a shower here, but we should see sunny spells in Belfast and temperatures ticking up higher by tomorrow. We're looking more widely into the mid-20s across England and Wales, maybe 28 across the southeast. That's 82 in Fahrenheit. Again, cooler in the northwest where these weather fronts persist. The high pressure, though, still dominant for most through the rest of this week. As it ekes eastwards, hotter air arrives with temperatures set to peak across England and Wales on Friday, over 30 Celsius in some places.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Very nice to see you again. It's just after 7:30. Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel, Webster, we welcome you on board our humble little programme on the radio, on television, online, worldwide, but that's it, in the fastest growing breakfast station that there is on the whole planet. That's it.
And we're humble too. What more do you want?
What more do you want?
Look, we're going to talk about the Labour leader now. Sir Keir Starmer's facing another inquiry over alleged breaches now of the MP's code of conduct. He's accused of not declaring financial interests or gifts worth more than £18,000 from UK benefactors. Well, Starmer has insisted that he's not broken the code. OK, well, for more on this, we can speak to Lucy Powell. She's the Shadow Culture Secretary. And, Lucy, we're going to talk a lot about Channel 4 and your worry about Channel 4 being sold off. But how does Sir Keir defend the idea that, 18,000 quid comes his way and he doesn't declare it? Is that a technicality, or what way would you describe it?
Well, I think it is a technicality, because I think what's happened here was that the declaration for that and a couple of other things were a few days late. So there was no suggestion that he was trying to hide them and not declare them. Obviously, he himself brought that to the attention of the registrar. We have a system here in Parliament where you have 28 days from receiving something to fully register that with the registrar. And my understanding is this was a couple of days late. This was some money he's been given to write a book, which of course he's donating the whole amount to charity. But even if you're giving it away straight away, you still have to declare it, and he didn't do that within the 28 days. So I think it is a technicality.
Okay.
But obviously it's something that he'll need to make sure doesn't happen in the future.
Yeah, and, we'll have to wait to see what the investigations bring up as well. But you couple that along with the Durham police investigation, you couple that up with the fact that he was lacklustre at last week's PMQs and what should, quite frankly, have been a gift to the opposition in the wake of that no-confidence vote. And it's no wonder there's dissatisfaction in the shadow front benches. I mean, the front page of the Times today talking about how lots of them have been talking to reporters at the Times, talking about how boring he is. Stop boring everyone to death, the shadow cabinet have been saying, and they're not going to win the next election. Is that were you one of those?
I definitely wasn't one of those, and I don't know who in the shadow cabinet would actually say that. I mean, look, I think Keir would be the first one to say, and he says this to us every Tuesday, which is normally Tuesday morning, we have the shadow cabinet. I'll be going there shortly, that we have to earn the right to be in government, that it's not just going to fall in our laps just because the Conservative Party are going through a very difficult period at the moment as they are, doesn't necessarily mean that people will then just all move straight over to Labour. We have to earn their votes. We can't be complacent about that. And we have to show the country and show the electorate how we want to change the country for the better and how we feel it needs to change, particularly when it comes to the economy. That just isn't working for ordinary people. That's why we've got the cost of living crisis that we have at the moment, with costs going up and up and up, and people's living standards going down, rents going up, energy. People are really struggling because the economy isn't really fit for purpose when it comes to ordinary working people. And so Keir is the first one to give us that lecture, rightly so, every Tuesday morning, that we can't just sit back and think it's going to fall in our laps, because it isn't, and we have to redouble our efforts all the time and keep working towards that general election and changing the country for the better as we want to do.
Now, Shadow Culture Secretary, Channel 4, right? It's an Opposition Day debate in Parliament today, and you and your party, you're going to be calling on Conservative MPs to stand up for British values and institutions and vote to stop the Channel 4 sell-off, right? So why do you think people care about that?
Well, probably most people don't care about that, and that's part of the point. I mean, why the government, when we've got all these big issues the country's facing, the cost of living crisis, war in Ukraine, problems with Europe and so on, why is the government pursuing a policy of privatising Channel 4 when there's very little evidence, there's very little support for it across the country or within industry? Channel 4 is this quite unique broadcaster within our world-leading ecosystem that we have here for great broadcasting, and obviously of which GB News is part of that as well, in that they are publicly owned but they don't cost the taxpayer a penny. And that enables Channel 4 to do what a lot of other channels aren't able to do, which is take risks, invest in British film, which they do on a very large scale. We've got some fantastic British films that have come through Film 4, like Slumdog, Millionaire, Brassed Off, lots of household name films that have come through that. And they're able to back some of our small independent production companies around the country, outside of London. They're really very much engaged in this levelling up agenda. And we think that selling Channel 4 off, who's likely to be bought by one of the big American media giants, will put at risk that British programming for a British audience, put at risk investment in British film, put at risk investment in British talent, and this huge amount of small independent production companies around the UK. So it's the wrong policy at the wrong time, and there's a lot of Conservative MPs who share my view on that, and I wanted to give them the opportunity today to show Nadine Dorries and Boris Johnson that they too oppose it.
To see how that plays out today. Look, whilst we've got you, Lucy Powell, I want to get your views also on our top story today, and that is this flight that will be taking off with the blessing, I suppose you could say, of the courts. They haven't stopped it, to Rwanda. The Archbishop of Canterbury, the Archbishop of York, 23 bishops have written in the Times today calling this immoral and something that shames Britain. Do you agree?
Well, we oppose this policy in Parliament. We didn't want it to become legal in the first place. And why did we oppose it? Because we think it's unworkable, which is being now, I'm afraid, tested in many ways through the courts and others. It's extremely expensive. It's going to cost a huge amount of money per refugee that are sent over to Rwanda. It's not going to stop the small boats coming over and people trying to come to this country through such means. And it's unethical and it's not very British. It's just not what we do when it comes to genuine refugees who are fleeing persecution and war. Britain has always provided them a safe home.
I mean, what is the solution then? Because we can't just have an open border and let everyone that wants to come in. I mean, that's the reason that the government is one of the reasons that the government has been voted in. There is a clear mandate to try and get a grip of this challenge. It's easy to criticise every solution that the government tries to come up with, but what would be your response, your idea?
Well, they are not doing the solutions that could work. I mean, this is a sort of desperate measure because all their other actions are not working. So, firstly, what we would do is speed up the asylum processing system. There's a huge backlog at the moment, which is partly why people are coming to this country, are here for years waiting for applications to be processed. So those that don't have a right to stay in this country aren't being sent back because it's taking so long to process their claims. Secondly, we'd make sure there are those return arrangements with France, Belgium and other countries, which we used to have. So when people's applications weren't successful, we had arrangements for them to be sent back, and that's not happening at the moment. We wouldn't be cutting the National Crime Agency budget by 20%, the very agency that is there to tackle these smuggling gangs. And we would make it illegal for these gangs to advertise their wares, essentially, on social media, which is where they get a lot of their business from. So, we think there's a lot that can be done here to tackle the issue, and that is not this divisive, expensive, unworkable policy, which I think is more about generating a debate elsewhere, away from the government's woes, than it is actually dealing with the issue at hand.
Pal, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
I just want to say a couple of other
things.
You
wanted
to the
to?
Shadow
Sorry, I was
Culture
told we
Secretary.
had to move on.
There's a couple of things I wanted to talk to her about. What basically Lucy Powell is saying today, Conservative MPs have the chance to vote with the Labour Party and show that they are brassed off, nice pun on the film, with the government's decision to sell off one of Britain's cultural crown jewels and kill off our homegrown film industry.
You've got to go. Yeah.
And I want to say, you're going.
She's
You've had enough of me.
Yes, no, she has to go to her next interview.
Oh, well, there you are. See, she just went and went.
I knew she had to go to other interviews. They're always on.
Well, it couldn't have been more important than this one.
I just wanted to reflect. Did
you? What do you want to reflect?
I wanted to reflect some of the GB News views on the migration policy. Jackie said it's a fantastic idea. People moaning about it all the time. It needs to stop. We cannot take in the whole world. And Charles says its main objective is to act as a deterrent, and this will then stop the crossings. The net result will be no flights needed to go to Rwanda. Yeah. And certainly that is the hope.
I think what I'm feeling is that there are people who are thinking, it's a bit unfortunate that this is Rwanda, and that seems a bit dodgy, but generally people are like 99% in favour of the policy.
Of our viewers coming in, certainly.
So there you go, 42 minutes past 7 o'clock, or that could be 18 minutes before 8, whatever way you want to look at it. Today marks 40 years since the liberation of the Falkland Islands after the Argentine invasion of 1982.
Yes, the battle to win back the British South Atlantic territory lasted 74 days, and in that time it cost the lives of 255 British servicemen. Nearly 800 were also injured.
Well, hundreds of Argentinian troops were also killed. Events are being held today on the islands and here in the UK to commemorate the end of the war. So let's speak to our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, who's there at the National Arboretum in Staffordshire. Mark.
Good morning, Eamonn. Good morning, Isabel. Yes, incredible to think that 4 decades have passed since the Falklands War, and the stage is set here at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire to remember and commemorate those events. We're joined now by Philippa Rollinson, who is the events lead here at the Arboretum. Tell us about this very impressive, the setup here. You're expecting 2,800 invited people, also members of the public.
Yes, we are indeed. So the Royal British Legion, the RBL's event here today at the National Memorial Arboretum is very much about reconnecting those people that were involved in the conflict. That the 30,000 people were involved in deploying the task force. We have many of them here today, and also some of the families who sadly lost loved ones during the conflict over in the Falklands 40 years, bringing them together here at the beautiful National Memorial Arboretum to reconnect and remember and honour the service and sacrifices that they've all made for us over the years.
And it is gorgeous, this area, this setting here, some 400 separate memorials around the Arboretum now, and a beautiful day for it.
Yeah.
There'll be a number of services also taking place outside of the main event that's taking place this afternoon.
Yes, our guests will be starting to arrive, those that are coming to the service and those that are general members of the public on site today will be attending a number of services, but I think almost a dozen services at the various Regimental Association memorials around the site before we come together here. But of course also right throughout the day we have our expo area where many of those associations, some of the national museums, more regional regimental museums, have got stalls on sharing their story of the Falklands with visitors on site today. It's going to be a really good day.
And incredible to think some of the helicopters and armoured vehicles used in that conflict will be on display there as well, so lots for people to see.
Lots for people to see, and I think really important for us to get people talking about their experiences, connecting, coming together and sharing, and being part of something here today. And those the armoured vehicles, and when the helicopters come in at about 9 o'clock, that's going to be really powerful for people, really tangible.
Yeah, that's the fly past that people of course will be looking forward to. On that issue, you spoke about getting people to start talking about those events. They didn't really, of that generation, talk much about what happened to them, many of them at least, and still to this day, 4 decades on, you're getting people coming forward. We're still suffering the physical effects, yes, but also the psychological effects.
Yeah, absolutely. I was privileged to meet some veterans yesterday evening at a small reception we held, and talking to one of them there about how talking 20 years after helped him. And so actually if we can reach out to other people who listen today and say, actually, that's me as well, we can help you, encouraging them on their families, anyone that's served, any veterans of the Falklands conflict, anything that we can help with. We're here to support the armed forces community today and ongoing. It's never too late to reach out, search RBL or pick up the phone to us.
Okay, Philippa Rollinson, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us this morning. And we will be here throughout the day on GB News, bringing you the events as they unfold live here at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire.
Now it's time to go through the newspapers. We bring in Norman Baker and Amy Cameron for their take on these. Norman, we're going to start talking about tax. This is the Daily Telegraph. The Prime Minister resists pressure to cut taxes as the economy slumps towards recession.
Well, indeed, the situation is, of course, that the Chancellor of the Exchequer is worried about the finances, and he thinks that we can't afford to throw more money away. And I think the rumour is that he's told the Prime Minister, if you want tax cuts, you've got to cut public spending in order to fund it. And the Prime Minister wants to carry on spending as much as he wants and to cut tax and to have everything hunky-dory, but of course the sums don't add up.
Yeah, the sums don't add up. So if you were there in power, is there anything you would cast your eye on and say we could do without that? I mean, we were talking there, the Shadow Culture Secretary there, Lucy Powell, about why they're selling off Channel 4. Well, obviously they're doing it to get some sort of money into the bank, aren't they?
Yeah, but the trouble is you can sell something off once, and then it's gone. And actually, Channel 4 will raise, what, $1 billion? In public expenditure terms, that's nothing really very much.
No.
You've got to look at something bigger than that. You've got to look at the budgets of each department. You've got to look at the inefficiencies in government. Some suggestion is that half of government money is wasted in terms of just bad economics, bad investment.
But what would you do?
Contracts.
Is there a big beast you would cut?
Is there a big beast I would cut? I'm not sure there is, to be honest with you.
Foreign aid budget.
Well, the foreign aid budget's already been cut, and actually I don't think it should be cut. I think it's in Britain's interest in terms of soft power to have a good foreign aid budget. And it's not that large. People talk about HS2. Well, HS2 is being built. You can't cut that now. It's already in the ground. The bridges are being built and so on. So that's gone. I mean, what you need to look at is the inefficiencies, the waste of money on PPE and all the stuff. And the Ministry of Defence is always over budget for its investments. I mean, it's criminal how the Ministry of Defence overspends all the time.
Well, the elephant in the room, of course, is the cost of the war in Ukraine. It's hugely expensive at a time when we really want to be,
it is.
tightening our belts.
And actually, we're sending the Ukrainians weapons, which I agree with, by the way. I think we're right to do that. But they're going to have to be replaced. They're our own weapons.
But then you keep saying they overspend.
Well, they overspend because what they do is they say, let's have an aircraft carrier, which is going to cost X million pounds. It then comes in 10 years late, costing 3 times as much as originally budgeted.
And they need new requirements attached to it. Fascinating what you say about the foreign aid budget. You talk about this soft influence.
Yes.
Would you just explain to people what soft influence means? Does that mean we go to India and we say, look, we'll help in this irrigation system, we'll pay for this. Incidentally, do you want to order 10 jets from us?
There is a link actually made between overseas trade and overseas aid. Those two things come together. You'll find that either directly or indirectly the government says to countries, we will help you out, and would you like to spend some of the money you've got on this? That happens all the time. There's an equation goes on there. But the soft power that Britain exercises now is more important in many ways than the kind of hard power. The hard power years ago was sending submarines and boats around the world. Nowadays, it's the BBC World Service. It's the influence we have in the Commonwealth. It's the influence we have through the Security Council. And it's those sorts of measures which we have, which we need to promote. And the government's talking about global Britain. If global Britain's anything, it's soft power, because we haven't got the hard power anymore.
And Amy, I suppose the advocates of the foreign aid budget would also argue that it would help with this migration crisis that we're seeing, because if countries of origin are more stable, if there is less desire to come to developed countries, then you don't have the crises that we're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all too often with this government, they operate at the level of dealing with the problem, not trying to address the causes and the drivers. And exactly as you say, many of the migrants that we see coming to our shores are fleeing really devastating situations in their own country, and anything that the UK can do to help to alleviate that, often that does take the form of addressing injustices that we may ourselves have played a role in committing historically. I think it's also worth remembering that the foreign aid budget is a percentage, or it was until this government slashed it, which meant that it was already designed to flex up and down in response to our existing economic situation, which I think that is sensible and proportionate. What we've seen with this government is them undermining that. And exactly as Norman says, we speak a lot now about global Britain. Global Britain is about much more than war making or participating.
Could I talk about a war that's going on in the royal family here? Because we've talked about, there's a few subjects we've just concentrated on today. I just want to get into some other stuff.
That's a lovely link, Eamonn.
It's a lovely link. This is a royal rumble.
He's a professional.
Let's get ready to rumble. It's the front page of the Mirror. Prince William, he threatened, it is said, it is reported front page of the Mirror, to pull out of a royal procession at Windsor yesterday, this Order of the Garter procession, if Prince Andrew was allowed to take part. Now, that's fighting talk.
Yeah, now, this is obviously alleged. Reportedly, he said this. However, whatever you think of the royal family, Prince William is one who understands the brief. And I think he is, within the royal family, attempting to salvage their reputation, particularly in light of a time, heaven forbid, obviously, that we mention it on here, but there will be a time after the Queen. And they, as the royal family, need to be confident that they have the trust and respect of the public beyond her as an individual. And I think the actions of Andrew are so damaging and so entitled. This man's belief that he is somehow deserving or sort of, it's his right, his birthright, I think is the language they use, to appear as a public figure after everything that he has gone through. We've yet to see any real contrition from Prince Andrew. And I think taking a step back from the front line of the royal family duties is the absolute least he can do. Well, if not in respect to his victims.
Back, it's retirement,
well,
basically.
Retirement. Yeah. I mean, I personally don't see that as any great loss to the British public.
If somebody gave me a Range Rover and Windsor, the grounds of Windsor to drive around
place up
with,
in Scotland.
place up in Scotland, a few horses to ride or whatever and feed, I think I'd be all right.
I don't know if you would,
He's
Eamonn,
not on the
though.
poverty line, is he? Let's face it. He's not going to be claiming housing benefit. Well, not housing benefit in the normal sense. Housing benefit in the royal sense, he might be claiming. But, I mean, look, the royals are all over the papers today. We've got Prince Andrew in the Mail, no hope of redemption, front page of the Express. He deepens his rift with the royals over his birthright. That's Amy's point. His birthright... I mean, just because he happens to be born into that family, he thinks he's entitled to something.
Staggering.
I don't believe that. Then you've got the stories in The Sun, Will's House of Windsor, about how they're spending more money on the royals in a new building, well, not new building, but new for them, in Windsor. They've just spent £12 million on refurbishing Kensington Palace for the pair, William and Kate. They're now moving somewhere else. They spent £4 million before refurbishing it for Harry and Meghan. That's all gone. They spent, I think, about £4 million
hang on,
on
Frogmore Cottage, that's actually inhabited now by Prince Andrew's, one of his daughters.
Yeah, no, that's right.
So it's not wasted.
Well, in a sense, it might be
It's being
because it
used
was
by another royal.
If you think about what was put in there, which was all Meghan's requirements,
Oh, right.
then whether or not they're going to be suitable for the new inhabitants, I don't know. But I mean, Kensington Palace has had so many makeovers over the years, all costing millions of pounds.
I actually read over the weekend that when William is king, he hopes to base his family within the castle. At least once the kids grow up, they might go into the castle. I thought that was really interesting that this shift of the monarchy away from Buckingham Palace, away from the capital, seems to be happening under, since COVID, really.
Well, it's a circle because go back to Victorian times. Victoria was based in Windsor basically all the time. In fact, that caused a consternation in her reign. People never saw her after Albert died. She hid away in Windsor for years and years and years. So in a sense, basing themselves in Windsor. The Queen, of course, has been in Windsor quite a lot recently because of COVID. So that's not an unusual situation for the royals to be in.
Well, what might be unusual, Amy, is come the summertime, the Daily Star is predicting a 40 degrees Celsius European heat wave.
Oh. Yeah, this story is an absolute maelstrom of terror in terms of what awaits us in the summer this year. There are rumours of a 40-degree heat wave across Europe, along with, obviously, we've seen all of the strikes and the issues around airports. And then, just to add, just cherry on the top here, apparently a plague of hornets.
Oh, great.
Yeah, these are truly terrifying times that we live in. I mean, it's bleak, and I wanted to bring this up because I don't know about you guys, but even the forecast of 30 degrees this Friday fills me with some degree of dread. And I think there is a slightly, I mean, this is a serious story in and of itself, especially the hornets. That sounds terrifying. But I think this conversation about how cities deal with increasing heat in the summer is a really important one. So often, obviously, you know me, I'll get on my high horse on this one, but so often when we talk about climate, we think about flooding and we think about kind of rain and sea level rises around the UK. But heat is also going to be a massive contributor. Now, this is weather. I don't want to overly conflate the two. However, we do know that global temperatures are rising, and our cities are absolutely not designed to manage this.
So how do we manage the heat in an environmental way without basically sticking the aircon on, which exacerbates the problem?
Aircon was just a point I was going to make, where you're cool indoors and they're blowing all this heat out, adding to the heat that exists outside.
So I think greening, actually, urban greening is a really interesting area that we should be thinking more about. So planting trees, basically, thinking about living walls, thinking about the amount of green space we have.
Because of the shade?
Because of the shade, and also because they just reduce heat. They draw in heat. So they create, like, cooler environments. And, yeah, the cooling effect, obviously, as well. So if you're in a building with a living wall, that protects you from the sun. I think that not only would that be addressing some of the heat issues, but obviously there's multiple co-benefits there. I think during COVID, we really saw how much of our cities were given over to traffic. And I think as we move away from that longer term, it's so interesting to think about how we can make our cities more livable in a whole manner of different ways. Also, I think, I mean, Norman might know more about this than I, but I think planning is also key, incredibly boring, don't get me wrong. But we need to be building houses for a future where our weather is much more extreme. In the UK, we've really been lucky. We've lived in a very narrow parameters temperature-wise, and that is changing, and we need a government and we need legislative bodies and we need other industry bodies to be thinking proactively about how we adapt.
30 seconds, Norman.
I read that somewhere, I don't know if it's true or not, that Edinburgh actually emits more carbon in summer through air conditioning than it does through heating in winter, which is quite terrible if it's true. And being born in Scotland...
That can't
well,
be
I don't
true.
know.
In Edinburgh?
Yes, in
I
Edinburgh.
would imagine like 5 people having air conditioning units in Edinburgh in the summer.
Well, I don't know about that. Well, anyone from Edinburgh wants to
I challenge
contact
you
the
to
programme, we can
produce
find out.
those figures from up your sleeve.
My last
Live
point,
fact-checking.
my last point on this, Eamonn, is going to be 30 seconds, is that being born in Scotland myself, I might say that I prefer 40 degrees Fahrenheit rather than 40 degrees Celsius.
Where are you from in Scotland?
Aberdeen.
Aberdeen,
Lovely.
Yeah.
Not far from Balmoral. You might bump into
that's
Prince
right.
Andrew up there.
Very good.
Right,
Guys,
lovely. We'll have
you
a
hope
very
not.
brief paper review in the next hour with you because we've got an absolutely packed show, but we look forward to having you back. Norman Baker, Amy Cameron, thank you both very much.
OK, join us right after this short break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The first flight carrying asylum seekers to Rwanda will take off today, despite protests.
Good morning. It is exactly 8 o'clock on Tuesday, the 14th of June. You're watching Breakfast, or perhaps you're listening to us on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Thanks for your company. Here's what's leading the news this morning. The first flight to Rwanda will leave later today after a decision from the Court of Appeal. That's despite a letter from the Archbishops of Canterbury and York, as well as 23 other bishops calling the decision immoral and a policy that shames Britain.
The EU has opposed the government's plans to scrap parts of the 2019 post-Brexit deal between the UK and Northern Ireland, arguing it breaches international law. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss will join us on the programme later. She's saying it's a reasonable, practical solution and will improve the flow between the two countries.
Today marks 5 years since the Grenfell Tower fire, which claimed the lives of 72 people, including 18 children.
The tragedy, which uncovered an enormous housing safety scandal in the UK, has left many people still fighting for justice.
And it's the 40th anniversary of the end of the Falklands War.
We'll be live from the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire to remember the end of the conflict.
You can join any of these discussions, and you've been doing that very well this morning. Thanks very much indeed for getting a part. What we want to do is we want to see and hear more of you via Zoom, so we want to get that. So email us if you want to take part. If you want, yesterday we had a very good viewer on from Wales, and his business actually was quite interesting. He sold ice.
He did, yeah, to festivals and things.
Delivered ice. So get in touch if you want to be on the programme, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News.
And don't forget, you can also subscribe to that GB News channel, our GB News channel, on YouTube. It's free and it's easy and it has all the latest on all the big stories everyone's talking about.
The first flight carrying asylum seekers to Rwanda has been cleared to take off later today following yesterday's Court of Appeal ruling.
However, the number of passengers that will be on board has been significantly reduced from 31. Current estimates stand at around 8, but it could possibly be fewer than that. And charities are still hopeful that the flight might be stopped altogether by a separate injunction in the High Court.
Campaigners have urged and argued that the policy will put migrants at risk. The Church of England has called the decision immoral, but officials are determined to go ahead, saying the strategy will deter people from making dangerous channel crossings.
Well, the Home Office has also said the plan is in the public interest and should not be stopped.
Well, let's go to our reporter, Ellie Costello. Ellie's outside the Home Office this morning. The thing is, Ellie, on, off, 31 people, 8 people. What's the latest you're hearing as to whether it may take off at all?
Well, good morning to you both. And a flight is scheduled to fly into the Rwandan capital, Kigali, later on today. But 2 questions remain. Will that flight actually take off? And if it does, how many people will be on it? I think it is going to come right down to the wire today. We are going to see 3 more legal challenges in court this morning. That's after that appeal was rejected in the High Court yesterday. But we've been hearing from charities and organisations in court. And today we're going to hear from 3 individuals, 3 migrants that are actually supposed to be on that plane today. They are going to be represented by their lawyers in court. And the numbers of migrants that were supposed to be on that flight have dwindled quite significantly in the past few days, and their legal challenges to being on that flight have been accepted. There were 31 migrants destined to be on that flight on Friday. Yesterday it was revealed in court that just 11 remained, and today it's being reported that that could be 8 or fewer people on that flight today. Now, 3 of those 8 people are going to be heard in court today, and many of them are bringing cases under the Human Rights Act or modern slavery legislation. So under the Human Rights Act, you have a right to a family life, for example. So if you have a family member in the UK, however distant that may be, you may be entitled to stay in this country. So those are the kinds of arguments that we may be hearing in court this morning. Now, the government wants this flight to take off later on today from an undisclosed airport with an undisclosed airline, and it hasn't been confirmed where that flight is going to take off from. There is some discussion that it could be a commercial airport, some reports that it could be an RAF base, but there's no confirmation as of yet, but we will of course bring that to you as soon as we can this morning.
On what the archbishops have been saying, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Archbishop of York, those 23 bishops, all of whom take up seats in the House of Lords and have the potential to cause a few disruptions in the passing of any bill of this nature.
Yes, absolutely. They are the latest influential people to criticise this policy. Ahead of this first flight, the Church of England leaders have said that the government's plan to send migrants to Rwanda is an immoral policy that shames Britain. These are the Archbishops of Canterbury and York, as well as 23 other bishops. This letter can be seen in the Times newspaper today. It claims that no attempt has been made to understand the predicament that these migrants are in. And the letter says whether or not this first deportation flight leaves Britain today for Rwanda, this policy should shame us as a nation. And they say that our Christian heritage should inspire us to treat asylum seekers with compassion, fairness and justice. Now, of course, this comes just a few days after reported comments from the Prince of Wales, reportedly in private, criticising these plans, calling them appalling. But Boris Johnson did respond. He said yesterday that they were always expecting this sort of backlash. They were always expecting teething problems. But he says this is the only way to stop the business model of criminal gangs operating in the Channel, which we know is incredibly dangerous.
Ellie, thank you very much indeed. Lots of views have been coming in throughout the course of the morning on this. Some people saying that the bishops and the archbishops are out of touch, that it's got nothing to do with them. We had Michael Brown, former Conservative MP, saying to us this morning, they're not elected. You know, if they were elected, perhaps they wouldn't be in that position. It doesn't reflect, in his view, the views of the people. Martin got in touch saying it serves no purpose. It's a swap deal that will see us take more than we send and we pay for the privilege. But Jessica says if it stops people making the deadly crossing in the first place, and this is a good policy and should be supported. What are your views? Keep those thoughts coming in.
Well, of the views of the Foreign Secretary, just around 9 o'clock this morning, if you stay tuned for that. Liz Truss on the programme. Right now, I'd like to introduce you to Patrick O'Flynn. Patrick is a columnist. He's also a political commentator. Very good to see you. Patrick, there's so much happening today. Rwanda, Northern Ireland Protocol as well, which is what we'll be talking to the Foreign Secretary about. She's saying what they've proposed is a reasonable, practical solution to the problems facing Northern Ireland. She also says that the UK could only make progress through negotiations if the EU is willing to change the protocol itself. At the moment, they aren't. Now, this is complex. It's not just about border control. It's about getting the institution of the Assembly in Northern Ireland up and running. And if people don't know, it's been held to ransom by the second biggest party, the Democratic Unionist Party, saying we're not taking part. So over to you, my friend.
Well, I see it slightly differently in that I don't see what the British government has done as a sort of militant picking a fight move. They could have just triggered Article 16. I see it more as a medium-term negotiating tactic.
Yes.
What they're doing is increasing British leverage in these negotiations by sorting out the home front in Parliament, equipping themselves with the legislation to let the EU know that you are going to have to give some ground and make this arrangement work, or we will very smoothly be able to trigger Article 16 without being held up.
If that is what it is really about, and it is not really about then getting the DUP into Stormont again. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is, are Liz Truss, Boris Johnson, whatever, really serious about border control? Are they serious about getting the Stormont Assembly running? Or are they both one and the same thing?
Well, I think they certainly would want to get the Stormont Assembly and power sharing in general back up and running again. And you know, we're coming not far away from marching season, from hot nights
it's already underway
in Belfast. So to be seen to be doing something, I think, is very important. And I think there's no denying that one community in Northern Ireland feels marginalised, on the back foot, and it's destabilising.
The DUP still haven't said, right, you've done enough, we're back on board.
No, but they've welcomed what was announced yesterday as a pathway to getting there. And I think that's actually all it is, because there's no action yet being taken to change the protocol. The government's just taking, if you like, a reserve power to do so. So when it next stares the EU commissioners across the table, we're in a strong position, and not like we were back when we were trying to get out of the EU and all those Remainers in Parliament had passed a law banning us from leaving without the EU's consent.
What about the legality of it all, and you know the message it sends to the world if the government, for whatever reason they've come up with to justify it, if they're seen to break an international treaty? And I know that the Prime Minister came out yesterday saying it's very trivial change, it's very, very small. But then you've got the Foreign Secretary with the legal opinion next to the publication of this document saying, no, there's a really, and I quote, grave and imminent peril situation to justify it. Which is it? It's trivial, or there's a grave and peril situation in Northern Ireland? You can't have both, can you?
I think you probably can have both, that it can be a relatively trivial change in the face of an acute danger. I mean, as a keen Brexiteer, the way I see it is somewhat more fundamental, which is Parliament is the sovereign lawmaking body now. EU law is no longer supreme over British law. If Parliament considers legislation and passes it, then by definition it's legal.
Yeah. You see, it's interesting, you talk about being a Brexiteer, but in Northern Ireland, although this may suit the Democratic Unionist Party and a sector of the unionist community who, of course, feel that their position within the United Kingdom is being eroded. Totally get that. But my goodness me, there's a lot of people who just love this situation off the protocol that Northern Ireland is able to be part of Europe and part of the United Kingdom.
Well, look, there's if you like, I would say that the nationalist community was generally anti-Brexit and keener on, obviously closer relationships with the South and good relationships with Europe in general. Then there definitely is a section of the unionist community, that more perhaps business-minded section in certain sectors, it seems like dairy, beef farming, for whom the protocol seems to be working quite well on a business level.
Yes.
But I think we found out from the overall Brexit debate that some things are more important to people, particularly when they relate to basic patriotic
from
identity.
Marks and Spencer.
Sandwiches
You can't
from
get
Marks
every
and Spencer.
sandwich
Well,
you want.
things like that, is ridiculous. And then there was the thing about the sort of garden centre project products that you couldn't quote bring British soil onto British soil.
Mason hampers or something? I remember reading.
I think that might be a minority pursuit, but good luck to them.
No, but it's true. It's true. It is, yeah. Patrick, fascinating talking to you. It is complicated. We're not going to solve anything, but thank you for shedding a light on hopefully explaining that more to our general audience. As I say, the Foreign Secretary, 9 o'clock this morning here on the programme.
I'll be watching.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Right, with the time at 8:13, we're going to bring you up to date on the latest headlines this hour. And this morning, the latest employment figures have been released by the Office for National Statistics. It shows the number of UK workers on payrolls has risen again by 90,000 between April and May to 29.6 million.
Veterans of the Falklands War will mark the 40th anniversary of the end of the conflict. There's going to be a service at the National Memorial Arboretum. On this day in 1982, the Argentinians surrendered after weeks of fighting. 255 British troops were killed. The Royal British Legion is inviting veterans and bereaved family members to the event.
And Scotland's First Minister is set to launch what she's calling an updated independence prospectus, updated from the 2014 referendum. Nicola Sturgeon says the document would set out the challenges a newly independent Scotland would face. She's going to unveil the first in a new series of papers in Edinburgh today.
We've been hearing from our reporter Alice Porter from the site of the Grenfell Tower fire in London throughout the programme this morning. And today marks 5 years since that disaster. 72 people lost their lives, and the fire is believed to have started from a fridge freezer, 23 stories in the tower block in West London.
Well, the fire also revealed an enormous housing safety scandal in the UK, with many people still fighting for justice all these years later. Alice Porter has the story.
Fire brigade.
Yeah, hello, hi. In the fire, flat 16 Greenfield Tower.
Sorry, a fire where?
Flat 16 Greenfield Tower.
It was one of the UK's worst modern disasters, as mothers, fathers, children and family members all perished in unimaginable circumstances. Survivors were left homeless, having lost almost all their belongings. Grief soon turned to anger. Theresa May immediately ordered a public inquiry as grieving relatives like Hamdan al-Alami demanded answers.
Here, my family here. Why? Day and night I no sleep. Always cry. I have 4 family die.
Soon after the fire, it quickly emerged that the flammable cladding on the block was central to the rapid spread of the fire. And it turned out that this cladding and other fire safety defects were found in tens of thousands of buildings across the country. Many became completely worthless, and leaseholders had to foot the bill to make them safe. Hayley Tillotson is one of them.
I actually went bankrupt at the end of 2020 because me and my neighbours in my flat in Leeds were paying for hundreds of pounds in Waking Watch, in new fire alarms and insuring and building insurance, and just loads of costs that we should never have had to pay because it just isn't our fault.
After mounting pressure, Housing Secretary Michael Gove announced in January that building developers would be the ones to remove dangerous cladding.
I'm clear about who should pay the price for remedying failures.
It should be the industries who profited as they caused the problem and those who continue to profit as they make it worse. To those who missold dangerous products like cladding or insulation, to those who cut corners to save cash as they developed or refurbished people's homes, and to those who sought to profiteer from the consequences of the Grenfell tragedy, we are coming for you.
But since then, many argue that little has changed and that progress has been too slow. 2 weeks ago, the government banned the specific type of cladding which allowed the blaze to spread so rapidly, half a decade since the fire took place. But while debate over housing regulations continue and the much-delayed public inquiry into Grenfell rumbles on, a community continues to grieve. During the Jubilee weekend, a poignant street party was held close to the tower, with 72 empty chairs to commemorate those who died. Emma O'Connor is one of the survivors of the fire.
It should really be speaking volumes to the government that we care and your actions speak louder than words, and we don't see any government help. We just we're not even allowed the tower back under our control.
Grenfell Tower still looms over London's landscape like a gravestone, a constant reminder of all those who lost their lives. Alice Porter, GB News.
And we now go live to Alice. There she is. And as I understand it, Alice, you've been talking to a lot of people today, but now we're going to hear from people who helped on the evening, people who helped survivors on the night.
That's right. I'm here at the Al-Manar Muslim Cultural and Heritage Centre, which is incredibly close to Grenfell, and it's here which provided so much support to people on the night. People were able to come and sleep here. They were given new possessions because, of course, so many people lost all their possessions and had absolutely nowhere to go. So this was the room that provided that sort of initial support. But if I come through here into this beautiful room, this also provided emergency services which were able to help survivors. And I'm joined by the Chief Executive, Abdul Rahman Saeed. Thank you so much for letting me come here today. Can you firstly just tell me what your memories were of that terrible night?
The night itself, it was a fasting month, so we were praying here as like normal day, and we only realized that it was going to be a very tragic incident only in the very early morning of the 14th of June 2017. From that moment, we obviously realized that we were now in a different setting, and we had to adjust everything that we used to do here to support the community, the survivors, and everyone else who needed our support.
And what exactly did you do? I mean, this lovely room, just describe to me what was going on there and the support that you suddenly had to give to all these people, many of which weren't people who would necessarily normally come to this centre.
Absolutely. The space was used to provide first any emergency support like toiletries, clothes, and any financial support. And then gradually we immediately transformed this particular space into a one-stop shop where people can come to get any emotional support, inquire about any legal rights or any housing issues and so on. So people would come here and access those services from here. Massage therapy, ear acupuncture, and everything related to stress relief, addressing depression or trauma were also provided from here.
And I know you were hands-on to the extent that you were actually bringing food and water to Grenfell Tower on the night and trying to get through the crowds of people. I mean, it's an absolutely incredible approach. I'm sure it meant so much to people who were just absolutely devastated by the fire.
Absolutely. I mean, it was very essential for us. So we had the supply of water and dates normally because it was a fasting month at the time. But when we realized that there would be many more people sheltering probably in a church or a local school, we thought we should take some of this to our local partners. And so we took some of the supplies to a local church, the Methodist Church. And from then on, we kept coordinating and supporting each other as much as we can.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. I suppose it's in so many ways today is a very sad day, but I know you were saying to me earlier that you've actually got much stronger links with different religious communities, with the Christian community, Jewish community, many people who came together on that terrible night to support survivors. So I think that is something that we can take today as a positive, lasting legacy of the Grenfell fire disaster, which of course happened 5 years ago.
Thank you, Alice, and thank you for being so respectful about all of that. There is I mean, you know, if you did take part in that, you did witness, you did see what you see, you did help people escape from what was going on. You were part of the emergency services. It doesn't go away.
It doesn't go away. And so many of us in this industry covered that story. Obviously, a lot of us based in London. People could smell that smoke from the other side of the city. Population of 8 million people. It was being carried in the wind. People were really moved by it. And a bit like in Alice's interview there, you know, the positive in it was the outpouring of horror support. People were taking donations. Do you remember at the time donations all coming down to that part of West London, and people really wanted to help. It's just so shocking that 5 years on, so many people are still in a terrible situation in the wake of that. Let us know your memories. Let us know your experiences, and you know, as we remember everyone involved in that awful fire 5 years ago today.
5 years on from Grenfell, 40 years on from the Falklands War, the end of the Falklands War. We'll be paying tribute right after this short break.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. Temperatures will be ticking up through the rest of this week, turning hot, especially by Friday. Some strong sunshine as well, but it's not blue skies everywhere. High pressure is dominating, but there are weather fronts at times just toppling into the northwest. So western parts of Scotland always keeping a fair bit of cloud and some outbreaks of rain, some across the northeast of Scotland this morning. That should be fizzling out. So much of eastern Scotland will be dry and bright. 1 or 2 isolated showers for southern Scotland. Most of Northern Ireland also set fair, and certainly for most of England and Wales. It's a cracking day, if you like. Sunny spells and temperatures ticking up. A coolish start out there right now, but temperatures by this afternoon widely over 20 degrees across the southern half of the UK, probably peaking at 24, maybe 25 across the southeast, just 13 or 14 in the northwest with that showery rain over the Highlands and the Western Isles. That'll continue to come and go through this evening. Otherwise, it's a dry evening, a beautiful evening with largely clear skies staying that way overnight as well. Temperatures will drop down with those clear skies and light winds. We'll keep some outbreaks of rain going across northern parts of Scotland. Into tomorrow, and it's a very similar day actually. We'll see again plenty of blue sky across England, Wales, much of southern and eastern Scotland, bit of showery rain across the far northeast, and always some rain at times close to the Western Isles and the west coast. Maybe a bit more cloud pushing into Northern Ireland with a small chance of a shower here, but we should see sunny spells in Belfast and temperatures ticking up higher by tomorrow. We're looking more widely into the mid-20s across England and Wales, maybe 28 across the southeast. That's 82 in Fahrenheit. Again, cooler in the northwest where these weather fronts persist. The high pressure, though, still dominant for most through the rest of this week. As it ekes eastwards, hotter air arrives with temperatures set to peak across England and Wales on Friday, over 30 Celsius in some places.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah. We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 8:27 and today marks 40 years since the liberation of the Falkland Islands after the Argentine invasion of 1982. The battle to win the British South Atlantic territory lasted 74 days, and in that time it cost the lives of 255 British servicemen. Nearly 800 were injured. Well, hundreds of Argentinian troops were also killed. And events are being held today on the islands and here in the UK to commemorate the end of the war. Well, GB News' Home and Security Editor Mark White looks at the legacy of the conflict and the effect it had on those who lived on the islands at the time.
It was a huge gamble, dispatching a military task force 8,000 miles into the South Atlantic winter. But for Margaret Thatcher's government, recapturing the Falklands was a political imperative. After 74 days under Argentinian control, the islands were finally liberated on the 14th of June 1982. But not before a heavy toll on both sides, with more than 250 British servicemen killed, almost 650 Argentinian losses, the deaths of 3 islanders, and a local population left deeply traumatised.
This was the kind of kit that really alarmed us because it was very heavy armour, and you can see that there's a turret there with at least a .5-inch machine gun, if not a cannon. And these were grinding through our streets.
Graham Bound was a young photojournalist in April 1982, running the local newspaper in Port Stanley, when he was suddenly faced with the scoop of a lifetime, an invading Argentinian army. Many of the images he captured during those months of conflict are being seen publicly for the first time, part of a fascinating exhibition at the Chatham Naval Dockyard. Images that of course document the military operation, but also the plight of a captive population caught in the middle of a violent struggle to retake the islands.
These Argentines are being rounded up by British troops. You can see, I think, Paras or Marines doing their best to round them up and at the same time getting these men to clear up a little bit. But the mess was unspeakable. This was one of our general stores here, which had been torched and was gone, but the smoke was still lingering. And when I look at these, I can almost still smell them. It was just a complete scene out of hell, frankly.
It was the day of the Vulcan bombing of Stanley Airfield that we heard HMS Hermes trying to get through to the Argentine High Command to offer terms of surrender.
Saul Pitaluga was a teenager at the time of the invasion when he and his father were captured by the Argentinians as they tried to relay a radio message from the British task force to the Argentinian command.
Long story short, they arrested my dad and took him into Stanley for some fairly rigorous questioning, and including having a gun held to his head and the mechanism being clicked to try and sort of extract more information.
By the time the Argentinians surrendered, along with the hundreds killed, the British had lost half a dozen ships and more than 30 aircraft.
4 decades on from the Falklands War, the lessons learned from that conflict have been used to help shape and improve the UK's military. Destroyers and frigates are now much better protected from air and missile strikes, and it's the reason why we now have 2 supercarriers, 3 times bigger than the Falklands-era aircraft carriers, better able to protect the fleet.
As the sacrifices in this pivotal military campaign are remembered, Graham Bound is anxious that the islanders, who also suffered, are not forgotten.
It's a thing quite near to my heart because I actually think that everybody just had to pick themselves up and carry on. I look at these guys, both of whom are now gone, and I'm quite proud of them, and I think they did a really good job. I wish they weren't perhaps a little bit forgotten.
And we can speak to Mark White now. He joins us from that Arboretum, the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire. Mark, it's going to be an incredibly poignant day. What can we expect from that service today?
Well, that main service gets underway at 2 o'clock this afternoon. VIPs and 2,800 invited guests here. They're just making the final preparations now. I'm going to just step out of the way, give you a look at what is a very impressive site here, the National Memorial Arboretum, home to, we're told, some 400 separate memorials commemorating the military and also civilian services. And as well as the 2,800 people who are invited here, members of the public will be allowed to come as well. There'll be displays of some of the equipment that was used down in the Falklands, armoured vehicles and helicopters, and of course those very poignant commemoration services that are not just taking place here at 2 o'clock, but there's about a dozen smaller services taking place around at the various sites here at the Arboretum. You heard in the report there the fact that some people in the Falklands, of course, still living with the trauma, the memories of what happened to them some 40 years ago. Well, still to this day, there are servicemen who were involved in the conflict itself that are still coming forward to the Royal British Legion, who are suffering the effects, physical effects, yes, but also psychological effects 4 decades on from what they experienced some 8,000 miles from the UK down in the South Atlantic. It was an incredible endeavour, a military endeavour, a huge political gamble for the Thatcher government, but of course Margaret Thatcher saw it as a political and a moral imperative to regain the Falklands Islands after that invasion by the Argentinians. And as I say, some 4 decades on now, incredible to believe that such a period of time has passed, but people will be pausing to remember those who paid the price, who gave the ultimate sacrifice to try to liberate the Falklands again.
Mark, thank you very much indeed for that. 25 to 9 is the time. Going through the papers next with Norman Baker and Amy Cameron right after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello.
Back.
Hello.
Hello, welcome back. It's all chaos behind the scenes, straight in amongst our sea of paper, trying to find our 8 o'clock newspapers, but I've luckily found mine. Norman Baker, Eamonn Cameron back for this. It's going to be a quick one, but we're going to start, Amy, with this story in The Guardian about invasive press, and this was the outing of Rebel Wilson, her lesbian relationship, before she decided to come out.
Right, who is Rebel Wilson?
Star of Bridesmaids, Australian comedian.
That's why I have no idea who she is.
Oh, he's got no cultural knowledge.
Why would I
Do
watch
you,
this?
Eamonn?
Get with the times, Eamonn. She's a huge deal.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this story
Still
is...
never heard of her. Don't know who she is. Which one is she?
On the
She's,
right.
yeah, on the right.
She has lost a lot of weight, to be fair.
Oh, yes, she's the big one who's not so big.
Yeah, very slim. Yeah, she's
Mhm.
incredibly slim.
Right.
Yeah, so this is a story really about the kind of behaviour of journalists, and I think it's a real throwback to the past. No, so and I think because now I don't think journalists behave in this way really at all anymore. I mean, I'm glad to say that, right? We saw such positive coverage recently when that young footballer came out as the first kind of openly gay footballer in the UK or in the Premier League, and this is just a real throwback to the way that the media used to treat celebrities and used to treat particularly celebrities who were rumoured to be LGBT+. So Rebel Wilson was forced in many ways to come out ahead of perhaps her own choosing because this columnist in an Australian newspaper contacted her to basically say they had sufficient evidence that they would be outing her. Whether
outrageous.
Really outrageous. And then I think what's really horrible about it is that he then sort of publicly complained that she'd gazumped him on a story that he'd sort of researched and that she'd kind of stolen it away from him by announcing her own sexuality on her own channels. Exactly. Luckily, the response to this, hopefully as a reflection of the times we now live in, has been incredibly positive. Lots and lots of people wishing her well as she's announced that she's in a relationship with, I think she's a fashion designer, her partner, her princess.
Here's what I find very confusing. I know there's lots of reasons, quite complex, but within the media world, within presenters on television, I know a good few people who are gay, and we know they're gay, they know they're gay, they don't overly hide it, but they will not admit it. And a lot of them have this thing that while their parents are alive, particularly their mothers, men in relation to their mothers, and I find it really sad because I agree.
I actually know married people who still can't come out.
Well, that's slightly more
Married to
complicated.
women, yeah.
That's slightly more complicated, but I do have to say, do you really think in this day and age people would be condemned or hounded? I mean, maybe I'm just being naive. Maybe they would be absolutely lambasted on social media.
I still think it's quite unusual to see, for example, someone who's openly gay, whether male or female, cast in a heterosexual relationship in a film, for example. I'm struggling to think off the top of my head of seeing a gay leading man in a heterosexual leading role.
What's her name? Who does the chat show in America?
Ellen DeGeneres.
I remember her in a movie with, I think it was Harrison Ford, and they were both stranded on a
I think that was
island.
before she was out, right? Because she wasn't publicly out for a long time. So I think, particularly if you're an actor, it still can be incredibly limiting in terms of the roles that you're deemed to be suitable for. And then I think if you're a public figure in general, the world of social media is vicious. And I can very much understand, particularly because so often people lose control of their own story when it's told in a public format. And those who do, I think, are very brave and deserve our commendations.
Good luck to her. Good luck to her.
Absolutely. Everyone's allowed a private life. Norman, let's talk about musical feuds, shall we?
Yes,
This is in the Daily Star. Rod's Not So Sweet Caroline, bust up.
Well, this is a fun story, isn't it? This is a reprise of Lennon Blasts Hollies, or whatever it was in the New Musical Express many decades ago, when you have one musical outfit falling out with another. And Rod's been blasted by Elvis Costello for saying he couldn't sing properly at the performance at the Platinum
He was perfect.
Jubilee concert. Well, that's Elvis Costello's view. And he was saying he's too old or he's not very good. Do you think I'm 78, or whatever the song would be that he was singing? Of course, Rod's hitting him back. So it's a bit of fun, really, between the two of them. I don't know if Rod Stewart and Elvis have ever met. Perhaps you have met.
Also refreshing. I feel like we so often see these supposed spats between like female celebrities. Because I'm personally enjoying a couple of old men in their 70s having at one another about hair loss.
I have to say, it was a really sweet moment seeing the Royals all singing along to Rod. They obviously didn't know some of the contemporary stuff, but they knew Sweet Caroline. It was cute.
Well, that was the thing. He's that's being attacked by Elvis Costello, saying, "What are you doing singing Sweet Caroline?" Well, you're saying it with a few words that we can't use on air.
Right, OK, gotcha. OK. Amy, you've gone back to The Guardian. Quelle surprise. This is an inspiring climb. Bomb survivors' wheelchair ascent of Kilimanjaro in Kenya. What?
So this was actually across a couple of the papers. I shouldn't have chosen The Guardian, too predictable. But this is a really inspiring story. I heard him being interviewed on a couple of the outlets yesterday. A gentleman called Martin Hibbert, he's 45. He was paralysed in the Manchester Arena bombing. He was attending the concert when the suicide bomb occurred there, and he has since he has just reached the summit of Kilimanjaro in a wheelchair, accompanied by expert guides and also by some of the medical staff who helped to save his life. And it's both a fundraising effort and also he's spoken really passionately and compellingly about the need to reframe the potential for disabled people in our society. He wanted this to kind of challenge people's preconceptions about what is possible. I appreciate that this is not necessarily possible for all people with disabilities, but I still think it's just a super inspiring story of what some people are capable of doing and how they can use that platform to kind of hopefully implement positive change or positive cultural change for others.
OK.
Well, we've got a birthday message now because GB News is 1 year old this week. So the congratulations have flooded in, haven't they not, Isabel?
Well, the breaking news this morning is that we have just been congratulated by none other than Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He's got in touch this morning and he's passed on his best wishes.
And he said, "Happy birthday, a year in, hired great talent," that'll be us he's talking about here, presented new perspectives and served new audiences. I hope you're one of them, Prime Minister.
Yeah, well, look, we would really...
a party we have to celebrate.
Oh, stop it. Don't ruin this lovely moment, Norman. What we would like to do is extend an invite to the Prime Minister to come and join us on this programme. It's been a year now. There's no reason to avoid us. We're very friendly. We give everybody a fair crack at it, and we'd love to have you on, Prime Minister, and thank you very much for your well wishes. Here to stay, I think, can't we?
Good. Anything else in the papers?
Should we look at this fortune uptick very quickly, and then we need to go on. Matt Goss's £1 million watch collection. He's been on the programme, Prime Minister. Matt Goss has been in.
He says, "My watches have kept me alive. I had 30 back then in the past, and they would now be worth 10 times what I sold them for. Seems to have time in his hands, is all I can
Oh, genius.
Worth including that story for that pun alone, I think.
We'll leave it on that note. You can't beat it. That's unbeatable, so thank you.
You both very much indeed. It is 8:45 exactly. Bringing you up to date news-wise, this is what we've got. Veterans of the Falklands War will mark the 40th anniversary of the end of the conflict with a service at the National Memorial Arboretum. We've been reporting on this morning. But on this day in 1982, the Argentinians surrendered after weeks of fighting. 255 British troops were killed. The Royal British Legion is inviting veterans and bereaved family members to the event.
A series of memorial events will be held today to mark the 5th anniversary of the Grenfell Tower fire. The service will be held at Westminster Abbey this morning, where the names of all 72 men, women and children who died will be read out. The Abbey bell will also toll 72 times.
Over 1,000 patients are spending more than 12 hours in accident and emergency departments every single day. A report by the Royal College of Emergency Medicine described the numbers as alarming and said the NHS needs increased resources and capacity.
And Scotland's First Minister is set to launch what she's calling an updated independence prospectus. It's an update from the 2014 referendum, and Nicola Sturgeon says the document would set out the challenges that a newly independent Scotland would face. She'll unveil the first in a new series of papers in Edinburgh today.
Now, We're now going to bring you the story of Archie Battersby. Archie's 12 years of age, and you will have heard about him this week. You will have heard about his court case yesterday, because yesterday a judge ruled that life support for him has been basically ended after a legal dispute with all of this. Archie is currently in a coma, and he's been the centre of this whole legal battle after he was very seriously injured in an accident and an incident at his home in Southend in Essex in April.
Well, doctors treating him at the Royal London Hospital told the High Court that it was highly likely he was brainstem dead, and asked for his life support to be withdrawn. Well, there's a lot to talk about here, and we welcome into the studio Archie's mother, Holly Dance. First of all, Holly, we feel for you. We really, really feel for you. Your boy, this accident only happened 8 weeks ago. Was this the realisation? Was this a judge saying to you yesterday, I'm sorry, but your boy has gone?
No, right. So we actually received the judge's decision we was set to go to court yesterday. We actually received the decision via an email, and it was then sort of told to us by our,
it's very
quite
impersonal,
insensitive,
isn't
really.
it? Yeah.
Very insensitive.
Yeah.
Your child's been given a death sentence and via an email. So yeah, very insensitive. We was obviously all set to go to court yesterday.
I think we have to outline to people, Holly, what happened to Archie. And incidentally, we'll be showing pictures of Archie, and we were covering the story yesterday, and both Isabel and I, we just looked and we thought, what a beautiful looking boy. I mean, absolutely, you know, you're blessed having him, athletic, a lot of energy, and he was taking part in, what would you describe it as, a prank, something very dangerous anyway. To explain to us what
I think that he may have been participating in an online challenge.
A dare?
It's not a dare, it's something that is on these online apps, and it's more like a challenge, and I think...
And this involves
Archie's
something,
not stupid, but
something
he's very
going
daring.
around his neck.
Well, under his chin, but very close to the windpipe, which is where it cut him off, and going round to the back of his head, so just like a tired hoop, and they balanced the weight on it. So a bit like a chokehold.
And you found him?
I did find him, yeah.
After how long, do you think?
I know now it was 3 minutes. I've gone through a timeline, and I think this is where this hasn't been put over to the judge, and I appreciate the judge has to make a ruling based on the evidence that's been put in front of her, and we haven't had a fair hearing. We've been allowed no medical experts in on our side, apart from obviously Dr. Schumann from the USA, that he doesn't agree with the doctors over here, and I think that is quite important to actually get across.
The disagreement, just highlight to people what the disagreement is. You believe he was maybe deprived of oxygen for 3 minutes or so.
3 minutes.
The medical experts on their side
have gone on 40 minutes.
And the difference would be what?
Massive
that he would
difference.
Be unrecoverable from 40 minutes?
So the doctor that we've got from the USA, very highly qualified doctor, he said that Archie suffered 10% necrosis, which is fully reversible. I think that's very important to get across. It's fully reversible. And part brain stem, obviously, damage. Now, Archie holds his own blood pressure. He holds his own body temperature. The only time he calls and he would need a bear hugger is after he's been stripped and he's having a bath.
Look, this is incredibly hard for a mother at a time when you just want to be by your little boy's bedside every minute of the day, I'm sure, and to be having to fight a legal battle is the last thing you want to do, but you are going to do that. You're going to challenge the decision
100%.
yesterday. You're going to appeal it, and not least because you say this is the first time that an MRI scan has been used to determine that somebody is likely, and I quote that was the evidence that was used in court, likely to be dead.
Yes.
So, I mean, that must be awful to be the first people to be using that.
It is, but maybe it's happened for a reason. Maybe it needs to be highlighted that it's not a legal way to pronounce somebody dead. You know, the two legal ways would be via the heart stopping or the brainstem test, which has been neither. It's an MRI, like what's next? People that go in to have an MRI test and they're told they've got a tumour, are you going to end those people's lives?
And look, no mother wants to let go of their child. I'm a parent. I can't think of... to be in your position, it makes me want to weep. Having said that, your intuition, you just know, you just feel in your bones that there's something still there.
Yes, I do.
And he's tweaked your hand or something?
Yes, he's held my hand. I've shook my hand vigorously to get Archie's
We're seeing this.
hand
We're
off,
seeing
just
this
to show
on
people.
screen now, and there is a grip there.
There's a very firm grip there.
Yeah.
I've got lots of videos like this. He's partly opened his eyes. You know, his blood pressure changes when, like his little friend was at the hospital visiting him the other day. His blood pressure changed every time Harley went round and stroked his face, and then he went back on the other side of the bed and it dropped back to where it is. You know, it's he's stable.
Did the judge see these pictures? Did the judge see video like that?
I think she has.
Well, I mean, she has now ruled that his treatment should stop.
Yes.
Well, what can you do if they say that is the case? What can you actually do?
We can appeal, and we've got very, very good grounds of appeal. It's not. I think it's important that people know it's not just me holding on to hope. We've got not just one or two. We've got lots of grounds for appeal.
So you're being advised that you stand a good chance at appeal then,
yes,
aren't you?
Most definitely.
So you're holding on to that hope, because I think apart from the tragedy of your beautiful, healthy little boy being in this position after such a quick incident, it's the fact that it's only been 8 weeks since this happened. It's too soon, surely.
Way too soon. There's coma patients. I've spoken to nurses. There's COVID patients within the hospital that have been given 6 months or more on ventilators. Archie was breathing or making his own efforts to breathe at Southend Hospital. They had to put him in neuroprotection to stop any more brain damage. They sent him to the Royal London with intention. He was actually going to have an operation or a procedure to release pressure.
Holly, when you go to visit him, tell us what you say to him or what you do.
I'm there all the time. I've lived at the hospital for the last 8 weeks.
Oh my goodness!
And do you talk to him? Do you
I
stroke
talk to him all the time. I talk to him. His sister gives him foot massages and pedicures. I've had reflexologists. A friend of mine comes in. She does reflexology. Again, she can feel muscle tone.
You can feel.
You just shout.
Plays music. I play him binaural beats on headphones, which reopens neuro pathways.
Oh, you've just been a wonderful mother, and hopefully he, is able to see that at some point.
Do you think you'll get your boy back?
Yes, I do.
You do?
I do.
You believe that?
If he's given enough time, I do.
Yeah.
I do. He's in there.
And could you tell me what sort of lad he is? Because, we look at those pictures, full of energy.
He's
a bit of a gymnast?
Yeah, he's a gymnast at South Essex Gymnastics. He's had some beautiful message from boxers. Max Whitlock, obviously Olympic gold medalist. He trains at the same gym as Arch. He's just full of energy. The MMA, he had his first fight coming up. I think the second week of being in hospital. He was training really hard for that. He's bubbly. He's really, really funny. He's just a funny character. And I think most important to get out there, he's got fighting spirit. And I think that's why the boxers' messages that come through for him are so important, because they've got fighting spirit too.
I'm suspecting he gets that fighting spirit from his mum.
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
He's got a sister.
He has, and a brother.
And a brother. How are you guys coping as a family?
His brother's, he's not coping brilliant, to be honest.
His brother?
He's 22, Tom, and Archie is literally his best friend. They've got a connection. Tom used to talk to Archie when he was in my womb. I think Tom is the first voice that Archie really recognised. He sort of turned his head. He's struggling. I think Lauren's struggling, but she's a bit more like me. She's got her own coping strategies, really.
Holly, what is your coping strategy? How do you keep going? Why do you keep going?
I think, personally, I've gone into fight and flight. I expected that decision, and I think people think, oh, God, like, how is she taking it? It's like she's taking it a bit too well. No, I'm just not shocked. I expected it. The whole process of how we've been dealt with from being in the Royal London Hospital has been completely shocking from day one, so I've had to go into fight mode, really.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. We wish you the best of luck with all of this. Come back and let us know.
I will.
Hopefully a good result.
Thank you for telling us your story. I think all we can offer is our prayers to you and to Archie.
And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
And by the way, the best mum ever. I hope that I would do the same in the same situation. Real inspiration.
Thank you.
You're watching and listening to GB News at Breakfast with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster. We're back after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
The Duke of Cambridge has threatened, we're reading, to pull out of the royal procession of the Garter yesterday unless Prince Andrew was banned from taking part. We are awaiting the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss any moment now, but we want to talk about some royal stories before we actually get her, and then we'll break off. Yeah. Katie Nicholl, the royal editor, with us now to talk about this. Katie, if we look at the papers today, Prince William, it's Andrew or me.
Battle of the Wills.
That's a great headline, isn't it? It's a battle of the wills. I mean, isn't it so interesting what this story is exposing, which is this real rift, this real issue within the royal family over the Duke of York, who, as we know, earlier this year, when Virginia Giuffre launched this civil court case against him over these alleged sex abuse historic allegations, it has opened up a big rift because the Duke was forced to stand down. He's lost his royal titles, he's lost his military titles, he's lost his patronages, and yet somehow the Duke of York clearly believes there is a way back into royal life. We saw that the Queen seemed to back that by allowing him to walk her up the aisle at the service of Thanksgiving for the Duke of Edinburgh back in March. But clearly, for William and Charles, this is just not an option.
And interesting that it's actually more Prince William, that's come out against this, at least in the reports on this occasion. I mean, we've long known of sort of tensions between Prince Charles and Prince Andrew. But for William to be, really getting a sense of the mood of the nation, not wanting anyone to be booed, just trying to... He sees himself as the future of the monarchy, doesn't he? He's trying to protect the institution.
Yes, I mean, I actually think that Charles and William are quite aligned on this. I mean, don't forget, Isabel, as well, that it was the Duchess of Cornwall who was being made Order of the Garter as well. Charles wouldn't have wanted anything to have upstaged that. But yes, absolutely, it seems to be William who dug his heels in. He can be very stubborn. And I think William was absolutely right to make that call, because he recognised that the royal family is still enjoying that crest of the wave of success of those Platinum Jubilee celebrations. Had Andrew taken part in that procession, I think it would have undone a lot of that goodwill.
You know what you're doing there, and I think very brave of you, very brave of William, very responsible. Everybody loves the Queen, everybody wants to think the Queen is infallible and whatever, but she's not seeing sense on this one.
On Andrew.
And this is Charles and William are saying, look, Mum, wake up, or Grandmum, wake up and see the optics on all of this. What are you doing that for?
Foreign Secretary's ready.
Oh, is she? Oh,
yes.
good, I didn't hear that. Right.
That's all right.
Sorry, we were just making a good point there. Let's go live to Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary. And Foreign Secretary, thanks for your time this morning. We're talking to you. Well, we've got so many things to talk to you about. There's so much in your red box at the moment. One of which could be people are saying that Britain could risk a war with the European Union over the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill. Now, the Prime Minister yesterday said it's no big deal. Is it or isn't it?
But the important thing is that we restore the primacy of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. What we've seen is it's been undermined by the reduction in east-west trade because of all of the customs bureaucracy. The people of Northern Ireland aren't able to benefit from the same tax benefits as the people in Great Britain. So when the Chancellor announced there was a cut on VAT on solar panels in the spring statement, we weren't able to pass that to the people of Northern Ireland. So we do need to resolve these issues, but we're doing it in a way that doesn't harm the European Union. We're still making sure the single market is protected. We're still making sure north-south trade is protected. So there really is no reason for a negative reaction from the EU from what we're doing.
Foreign Secretary, is it really about that? Is that the primary concern? Or is it about getting the Democratic Unionist Party back into the Stormont Assembly?
Well, this is all related, because one of the reasons that unionists are not happy is because of the undermining of the relationship between Great Britain and Northern Ireland on issues like taxation, on issues like trade. It's harder for people in Northern Ireland to get the goods that they want from mainland Great Britain. It's more costly. I've met hauliers, I've met supermarkets who tell me how expensive it now is to bring the goods in. So these are issues of concern to the business community in Northern Ireland, but particularly the unionist community in Northern Ireland. And we can fix these issues with our legislation, whilst at the same time making the EU no worse off.
Yeah, so there is a lot of concern. For a lot of people, the protocol works. It works very, very well. It is an issue, of course, for a lot of people in the unionist community. A lot of folk in the UK are worrying about retaliatory measures from the European Union. But last question on this, is it fair enough to say that you have not pulled the plug on the protocol? What you've simply done is strengthened your future negotiating position with the European Union?
Well, what we're doing is we're making practical changes to the protocol to make it work, as I've said, at the same time as protecting the EU single market. Now, my preference is to do that through negotiation with the EU, but as yet they are refusing to change the protocol. And some of the points I've mentioned, like the customs bureaucracy and the VAT point, are baked into the text of the protocol. So we do need to change the protocol itself. I'd rather do it through negotiation. But what we can't allow is the situation in Northern Ireland to drift anymore. And we haven't seen an executive since February. The people of Northern Ireland need a government. So that is why I am absolutely determined to act.
Secretary, just a really quick question, because I know you have to go after this, and I have to ask you about this flight that's due to take off due to go to Rwanda today. The Archbishop of Canterbury and other bishops and archbishops have come out saying it's an immoral policy that shames Britain. Look, this flight might well take off. We don't know how many passengers will be on board, but you have a judicial review coming up in July of the policy. Do you think that you might have won the battle but won't necessarily win the war on this?
Well, the Home Secretary is absolutely determined to push ahead with this policy. It's the right thing to do. The people who are immoral here are the people traffickers, trying to trade in lives, damaging people, potentially seeing people perish in the English Channel. So it's very important we act. The flight is going to leave today, and if people aren't on today's flight, then they will be on subsequent flights.
On the flight, can you tell us how many you believe will be on it?
I don't have a number for you, but I can assure you the Home Secretary is determined that the flight leaves today.
OK, Foreign Secretary, we know you've got to go. Liz Truss, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Back to Katie Nicholl, Vanity Fair's royal editor, and we were talking about so many royal stories, and we're talking about Prince William and Catherine to move to, I love how they term these houses, cottages, Adelaide Cottage, which looks like a complete mansion. Anyway, this is on the Windsor estate. What's the thinking here?
Well, I think the thinking is twofold. I think that Kensington Palace, which is also deemed an apartment but happens to have about 20 rooms, yeah, they are quite deceptive, these royal residence descriptions. I don't know how happy they are being in central London. They're very visible. Every time they land in a helicopter, someone seems to be there able to snap them and the children. They're very much country people, and this seems to tick all the right boxes. It puts them in Berkshire, it puts them closer to Catherine's parents, they're very close to the Middleton family, and it puts them close to the Queen. They're literally a short walk now from Windsor Castle, and I think probably Windsor is, let's taste it and see, because I wouldn't be surprised at all if further down the line Windsor Castle is where we will see the Cambridges in full-term residence.
That's what I was reading at the weekend.
I think it's very likely.
They could move into the full castle itself at some point.
Well, don't forget that was the castle that Meghan wanted to move into. She rather had set her sights on wanting Windsor Castle, but I've been told for quite a long time from sources that this is where William and Catherine see themselves. It would work very well as a family residence, and the Prince of Wales wants to largely be based at Buckingham Palace and over here in the capital. So it makes sense. So I think what we're seeing is a plan really being put down for the future. And we're going to have an announcement, I would say pretty imminently, about a new school for Prince George and Princess Charlotte. I can't say which one, but I think it's going to happen and all coincide.
I know where that is.
Well, let's not say anything.
Okay.
But a move to Windsor just seems to make sense for them at the moment. And I'm sure the Queen will be delighted because she'll get to see her great-grandchildren.
What about the taxpayers in all of this? I hate to be the party.
Yeah, no, I know.
But they just
it's
did
a legitimate
very
question.
Expensive refurbishment.
Yeah.
They've done Amner Hall, they've just done Kensington Palace, as you say.
Yes.
In fact, isn't Buckingham Palace still going through some
Well, Buckingham Palace going through a 10-year, multi-million.
So it's costing a lot of money. Oh,
no,
and
but they say there's
Cottage also got
no extra taxpayer-funded security or refurb needed on this one.
Only, Eamonn, because it was done a few years back. But I think this is a legitimate question. I think people will ask questions because at the end of the day, apartment 1A at Kensington Palace will now stand empty. OK? And the hall, which was paid for privately.
Are they not going to stay there when they're based in London?
Yeah, but how often are they going to be based?
The whole
point that but you don't need a 20-room residence when you're commuting, right? This 4-bedroom home is going to be home. Then they've got Anne Hall, which I must point out was privately refurbished. They paid for that. But when you've got the Duke of Cambridge selling the big issue and putting the map on homelessness, I think people will say, well, actually, what are you going to do with the 20-room residence that's vacant? I'm sure there is a plan. William is supported by very clever, very astute people, but it does throw up those questions. A move to Windsor makes sense, and I think it was absolutely right that they chose a residence that was small. It's only 4 bedrooms. There'll be no staff living here, and it didn't need an expensive refit.
What did you make of that big issue thing? I'll tell you, I was quite shocked. As I was recuperating on Friday, I was watching a phone-in programme on television about it, and the violent vitriol towards, I got the wrong one, towards William for doing this. Whereas, I mean, I'm off to do some charity work after the programme today, and I know there is worth in you being associated or having a picture or whatever. I know what the charities get out of it. He's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't there. I didn't really see what he did wrong.
I think it's, Prince in his castle, one night,
the wrong
one night on the
charity, was it?
streets, which is, no, I think actually homelessness is going to be a big issue for the Duke of Cambridge over the coming years. I think there's going to be a big initiative that we'll hear about very soon in that. This is the Prince that slept rough.
Yes.
He, and didn't, and the
His mother was very big on the whole issue.
He inherited this love of this awareness of homelessness from Diana very much. And so, I think you can't knock him for that. It wasn't a staged photo opportunity. Someone happened to recognise him. He's trying to get out on the streets to understand something, because I think this is the preface to something bigger in the near future.
And Katie, we interrupted our interview with you earlier to talk to the Foreign Secretary, and I just want to ask you about the Rwanda story.
Yes.
We've got the Archbishop of Canterbury coming out saying that it's immoral, this shames Britain. We had Prince Charles's comments over the weekend. Jenny Bond yesterday morning was saying we should welcome the royals having opinions more. If they want to, remain current and relevant in the future, and there are more questions about the future of the monarchy, she thinks Prince Charles shouldn't be censored in the way that he will be once he becomes king.
It's a tricky one.
What's your view?
It's a tricky one, because I think if we're going to have a hereditary monarchy, we have to have an independent, politically neutral head of state. But he's not head of state yet. Clarence House, interestingly, didn't deny those comments, which makes me think there's absolutely something to it. We know that Charles has quite strong views on many issues that some deem political. Many would argue this is a humanitarian issue. I think it's dangerous ground, and, in the future, I think people will not be willing to tolerate this when he is king.
It was a comment in private in his defence. I mean, he'll still have comments in private when he's king.
He's still going to have opinions when he's king.
Exactly.
He's just going to have to be, I think, careful about what is
where
leaked and how he expresses it.
OK, well, Katie, I think you're off to Ascot today. Will there be any royals there this week?
We're hoping. We're waiting for an announcement from Buckingham Palace as to the Queen's attendance later, but let's hope that she is there, and if not, that she's well represented by her family, because it wouldn't be Royal Ascot without the royals.
Exactly.
Do you get access to the royal enclosure?
That's where I am with another network to do what is usually the royal carriage procession.
We're there tomorrow.
We are.
Well,
in the royal enclosure.
We'll have a wonderful time.
I am entitled to go to the... She's not entitled to go to the royal enclosure, but she can come as my guest because I have got an Order of the British Empire and I'm allowed to go to
well, have a wonderful, wonderful time. For me, one of the greatest parts of Ascot was always just the anticipation of what the Queen was going to wear, and the bets, not on the horses, but on the colour of the Queen's
Oh, my
hat.
God, you want to see what Isabel's going to wear? I've had an exclusive preview this morning and everything.
I know,
incredible.
it will be wonderful. Well, you two have a
Incredible.
fantastic
Ruthie's
time.
coming with us.
Yeah.
So it's
just
going
to
to be a
keep it
great
all
day out.
official and above board.
Yeah.
My wife's going to be there separating
To
us.
monitor the champagne.
It's Eamonn and his telly wife and his real wife. It's going to be a great day
Sounds
out.
like a good
Lovely
combination
see
to
you,
me.
Katie.
Eamonn,
Thanks so
two
much.
wives, Holmes. That's me.
God, there's the headline right there.
Katie, are you there tomorrow?
I'm not there
right.
tomorrow. Well, if the Queen's there, I will be there, but
right.
I don't expect her to be there every day. So,
Oh.
yes. It really is work for me, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. Have a
See you
good
next
day.
week.
Thank you very much indeed. Look, it's coming up to 9:15. We're going to take the break there, and we're going to come back with Showbiz News. What is in the Showbiz News today?
Wow, we're going to be hearing why Amber Heard could be back in front of the cameras following her court case with Johnny Depp. All that and more after this.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. Temperatures will be ticking up through the rest of this week, turning hot, especially by Friday. Some strong sunshine as well, but it's not blue skies everywhere. High pressure is dominating, but there are weather fronts at times just toppling into the northwest. So western parts of Scotland always keeping a fair bit of cloud and some outbreaks of rain, some across the northeast of Scotland this morning. That should be fizzling out. So much of eastern Scotland will be dry and bright. One or two isolated showers for southern Scotland. Most of Northern Ireland also set fair, and certainly for most of England and Wales. It's a cracking day, if you like. Sunny spells and temperatures ticking up. A coolish start out there right now, but temperatures by this afternoon widely over 20 degrees across the southern half of the UK, probably peaking at 24, maybe 25 across the southeast, just 13 or 14 in the northwest, with that showery rain over the Highlands and the Western Isles. That'll continue to come and go through this evening. Otherwise, it's a dry evening, a beautiful evening with largely clear skies staying that way overnight as well. Temperatures will drop down with those clear skies and light winds. We'll keep some outbreaks of rain going across northern parts of Scotland. Into tomorrow, and it's a very similar day, actually. We'll see, again, plenty of blue sky across England, Wales, much of southern and eastern Scotland. Bit of showery rain across the far northeast, and always some rain at times close to the Western Isles and the west coast. Maybe a bit more cloud pushing into Northern Ireland with a Small chance of a shower here, but we should see sunny spells in Belfast and temperatures ticking up higher by tomorrow. We're looking more widely into the mid-20s across England and Wales, maybe 28 across the southeast. That's 82 in Fahrenheit. Again, cooler in the northwest where these weather fronts persist. The high pressure, though, still dominant for most through the rest of this week. As it ekes eastwards, hotter air arrives with temperatures set to peak across England and Wales on Friday, over 30 Celsius in some places.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices. With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Now, we've had an amazing conversation with Stephanie here. Just thought it was nothing to do with the show.
Oh, yeah, come on, let's find her husband.
Oh, no, there's you spilling the beans.
We're
There's you
just
spilling the
talking,
beans.
but she needs a
It's
lovely
so hard
man.
to find someone
You think
these
so?
days. It is hard to find someone. I think people have too many options, especially on dating apps. You know,
you're right
if you
there.
meet someone, you know they're speaking to at least 4 or 5 people. And there's things such as ghosting. Do you know about ghosting?
do know about
Eamonn?
ghosting, yeah.
breadcrumbing,
Yeah.
zombieing. There's
But you
too
know,
many
out of
options.
curiosity, just out of curiosity, I'd love to go on a dating app
Ooh.
just to see who would be.
I don't think Ruth will be too happy.
No,
with
I
that.
mean just for fun, you know,
Yeah.
just
Just
to
to
find
swipe
out,
right.
just
Yeah.
to see who actually.
Yeah.
What way would they swipe on me?
Oh, I don't
If they
know
like
how
me?
they.
Right,
Oh, I don't know
right.
what
And
you
they
do
like
if you
you.
like them. You swipe
Yeah.
right, yeah.
All right.
But basically, Steph,
Yeah.
you just need a good one.
Yes, I
and we need to.
do.
If there's anyone out there,
Oh my gosh, my Instagram's going to be flooded
yeah,
with
you- would you
they'd
want
be so
people-
lucky to have you because
Would you
you're
want
such
somebody
a nice soul.
in the
Thank
business,
you.
in show business, or not?
I don't know if 2 showbiz correspondents or reporters can actually
Too much
make a good-
competition.
Yeah, it's too much.
Look
It'll
at
get too
Eamonn and Ruth.
catty.
They've been a showbiz couple.
Yeah, look at us. You're
But
right.
who wears the trousers in the marriage?
Oh, in anything. It's a bit like in here. I'm just here to serve. That's all I do.
Quite right.
So what are you gonna begin with?
So Amber Heard,
right,
as
you see,
Civic-
I thought she's finished.
Never that.
Why?
Because this is Hollywood. If someone's lost a case, a high-profile case like Amber has, she now wants to have her say, and she's going to be having her say on NBC
Does
today.
that get her a job? You know, it's fine her having her say, but she's an actress by
Yeah.
profession, so...
Well, she'll get paid, presumably.
She will, and she owns Johnny £8.2 million.
gonna have to get paid a lot.
Which she said she can't afford. So I knew the interview was going to be coming, and I know a book's probably going to be coming out.
Right.
But she said that, you know, she couldn't say everything she wanted to say while she was on jury, while she was
Who's she going
standing.
spill the
case.
beans to?
Well, she's going to be spilling it to Savannah Guthrie on NBC today, and it's going to be coming out. Never have I, but she should be spilling the beans to us.
She should come to us.
Yeah.
She really wants to get
We
the
will
story
love
out.
it.
She should come and speak to us.
Will you support Amber, though? Were you supporting Amber during the case?
Not in the slightest. No, I mean, it just became obvious. You couldn't believe him. You just looked at it and you thought, that's another porky pie she's told. She's been caught out, whatever it is, and therefore she becomes completely discredited. Don't get me wrong, I've zero tolerance for anybody who's in an abuse,
Same here.
dishing out abuse or something in a relationship. But I just thought to myself, oh my goodness me, but I don't know what it does to her marketability as an actress.
Well, we know, with the Will Smith and all those kind of cases which have been quite controversial, the PRs go into damage control, and she's lost the case now. So this is going to be her chance to have her 2 pence worth and to say what's really happened. She's described Johnny as a fantastic actor, and she's not surprised that she lost the case.
But she could find herself in court again, depending on what she says.
Well, she wants to appeal the case, so she is. It's going to go to court again. So this is not the end of it.
Gosh, help us all.
What do we expect in Hollywood? We all love the interview because we want to hear what she's got to say.
No, we love the interview, but it's just, the drama that
and
goes with it.
dragging it on.
All this talk of husbands. Obviously, Britney Spears recently married. Lovely ending to a terrible
She
saga
looked very
for her.
happy, didn't she?
But breaking news this morning, her ex-husband has just been charged with trying to crash that very wedding.
Which ex-husband?
His name is
Jason Alexander.
And he's also been charged with stalking her.
Yeah, definitely. So they were only married for 3 days.
That's right.
Her and Jason, and then their marriage got annulled.
Yes.
And last week, with her fairy tale wedding last week, he gate crashed it. He was filming it on Instagram Live. He's a bit deluded.
So she's his claim to fame.
Yeah, definitely. But it's sad. It seems like he's got a bit of a checkered past. So now he's been charged with stalking and 4 counts of misdemeanour.
Poor woman just can't get on with
beset with these sorts of horrors.
Well, I think that's why we can see why Britney's had so many mental breakdowns in the past. It's like if it's not her family, it's now dealing with her ex-husband, it's dealing with the public limelight. So it's quite full on, but hopefully he's got a restraining order. She's got a restraining order against him for the next 3 years. So hopefully he adheres to that. But
this intro is like biggest advert for not being a celebrity. Honestly, it's like one awful story after another of what they've been up to. So we've had Amber Heard, poor Britney and all her checkered incidents, and now Kevin Spacey.
Oh, my God.
Also,
Kevin Spacey
murky.
was one of my favourite actors in the past.
He is a fantastic actor.
In these situations, it's always hard to separate the art from the so-called crime that they've done. But Kevin Spacey will be heading back to London to a Westminster Magistrates Court on Thursday because he's facing 4 counts of sexual assault. In these kind of situations, he didn't have to come back to the country, but he says he wants to come back to the UK to prove he's innocent. And he seems like he's quite confident that he's going to win these cases. But he's gone quiet in Hollywood at the moment due to all these sexual assault cases. But now is his chance to fight his corner.
Well, okay, we'll see how that one plays out. I saw him at the Old Vic doing a solo, I can't remember the name of the show now. It was a solo performance. It was a monologue, basically, for however many hours. Unbelievable.
Incredible.
Unbelievable. And he was sweating profusely, didn't drop a line, engaged everyone, entertained all these different characters. Absolutely amazing.
He was very good in House of Cards.
Yes.
I loved him in American Beauty.
Yes.
He was just, that was
He was an Oscar winner.
Yeah. What do you guys think of such situations, though, when old people come back with such cases against them? Do you think it's
Look, it's
dangerous
right. It's right. You know, if a crime is being committed and some sort of awful intrusion or violation, it's right that it should be addressed. So I'm not one of these people who say, oh, the poor man is 92, but he was a Nazi war criminal. We shouldn't hound him. No, you should hound him.
Yeah, and look, I'm not saying anything about the specifics of this case because that's obviously going on, but we know that there have been incidents, and I'm trying to think of sort of high profile, maybe, I'm going to say Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, these positions of power in Hollywood. They get the Messiah complex and they think they're above the law and they treat women, or in this case, young men, however they choose to. So, I didn't want to talk about that case. But you know what I'm saying.
They can get away with it.
It's a dangerous old thing. Too much fame and adulation.
Well, he thinks he's going to have his day in court,
so we'll
so he's a brave man to be doing that. And if he needs to clear his name, then we need to do that. But the main news is that we need Stephanie to...
Not in a desperate way. You're happy. Your life is fabulous, by the way.
You do realise that. You do realise as a single woman, like, you can't just mourn if you haven't got somebody. You kind of have to make the most of the, you know, where you're at in life, and gives you a bit more time to discover yourself. But it would be nice to have a companion.
Yeah, you deserve it. And whoever ends up with you will be very lucky.
This is
very
touching.
lucky.
I wasn't taken already.
Oh, gosh, Ruth's going to come after me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much indeed.
We'll be back tomorrow.
We will. With that, we'll say goodbye to you. Thanks for your company today. It's been quite an intense programme. Lovely talking to Stephanie at the
Need a lie
end
down.
of it all there. We could do with a lie down. Thank you very much. From 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Hopefully, we'll see and maybe hear from you then. Bye-bye.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. Temperatures will be ticking up through the rest of this week, turning hot, especially by Friday. Some strong sunshine as well, but it's not blue skies everywhere. High pressure is dominating, but there are weather fronts at times just toppling into the northwest. So western parts of Scotland always keeping a fair bit of cloud and some outbreaks of rain, some across the northeast of Scotland this morning. That should be fizzling out. So much of eastern Scotland will be dry and bright. 1 or 2 isolated showers for southern Scotland. Most of Northern Ireland also set fair, and certainly for most of England and Wales. It's a cracking day, if you like. Sunny spells and temperatures ticking up. A coolish start out there right now, but temperatures by this afternoon widely over 20 degrees across the southern half of the UK, probably peaking at 24, maybe 25 across the southeast, just 13 or 14 in the northwest, with that showery rain over the Highlands and the Western Isles. That'll continue to come and go through this evening. Otherwise, it's a dry evening, a beautiful evening with largely clear skies, staying that way overnight as well. Temperatures will drop down with those clear skies and light winds. We'll keep some outbreaks of rain going across northern parts of Scotland. Into tomorrow, and it's a very similar day, actually. We'll see, again, plenty of blue sky across England, Wales, much of southern and eastern Scotland. Bit of showery rain across the far northeast, and always some rain at times close to the Western Isles and the west coast. Maybe a bit more cloud pushing into Northern Ireland with a small chance of a shower here, but we should see sunny spells in Belfast, and temperatures ticking up higher by tomorrow. We're looking more widely into the mid-20s across England and Wales, maybe 28 across the southeast. That's 82 in Fahrenheit. Again, cooler in the northwest where these weather fronts persist. The high pressure, though, still dominant for most through the rest of this week. As it ekes eastwards, hotter air arrives, with temperatures set to peak across England and Wales on Friday, over 30 Celsius in some places.
Tonight on GB News, at 6 it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On